Hello and welcome to Instant Transmission, a podcast where we discuss everything Dragon Ball and how sometimes I don't know when to breathe during the intro script. It's bad. With Babidi no more and Majin Buu's mean streak momentarily quelled by the courageous Mr. Satan, things are finally looking up. That is until some doofus has to go and shoot Buu's little doggy. I don't think any of us care how many other puppies were likely killed from Buu's rampage across the planet. All that matters is that this guy is getting his comeuppance. On tonight's episode of Instant Transmission, I'm your host, Dayton, and once again, I'm joined by my co-host, Todd.
Hi.
And tonight, we'll be covering Kai's final chapter, episodes 141 through 149, as we delve into our Part 1 coverage of the Fusion Saga. After defeating most of our Z fighters, Buu was promised a fun and powerful warrior by Goku if he could just wait 2 days for him to arrive. As excited as Buu was, Babidi was not having it. And after making a couple crude slights towards Buu, while voicing his displeasures, the evil wizard was torn apart and killed by his own minion. Buu wandered freely and continued wreaking havoc and destruction. That is until Mr. Satan and a little puppy befriended the pink marshmallow. The world's greatest hero managed to tap into Buu's more empathetic side and stopped his deadly rampage. This all may have just come to an end. That is until some enraged young man foolishly shoots Buu's dog right in front of his eyes. And with all that covered, was there anything you wanted to add before we got things started, Todd?
No, let's see what this monster has coming to him.
All right. Well, we kick things off with episode 141, What Anger Gives Rise to Another Majin. And this episode begins with the tragic, bloody scene of Buu's puppy and Buu standing there stunned, eyes wide open, and a pissed Hercule. And there's a lot of scenes like this in Dragon Ball, or at least this Buu saga, where we see just kind of over-the-top, gruesome scenes that I'm not used to seeing in the rest of Dragon Ball, right? Previously, we saw Babidi just ripped apart in gruesome fashion. And we actually see this like really sad, somber scene of this bloody puppy just laying just motionless in this kind of desert rural area as everyone kind of looks on. And it's kind of a hell of a way to start tonight's episode.
Yeah, I agree. I think one thing that I want to talk about as we go through these episodes is the extremes that the Buu saga has, where it has, like you said, in my opinion too, probably the most like violent deaths and gruesome scenes in it, as well as in Dragon Ball Z anyway, the most like gag-tastic, like original Toriyama, like slapstick sort of comedy, and they're all kind of interwoven together, which is wild. But this scene with the dog kind of results in Majin Buu flipping his shit. He is mad.
Yeah, we see, and it's really interesting because you actually don't see Buu's eyes actually open very often. And this is one scene where his eyes are wide open and you see him kind of gritting his teeth, and there's steam just tea kettling out of all the little porous holes in his body as he's just building up and writhing in rage. And these dummies decide to make things even worse by firing rocket launchers and crap at Buu and Mr. Satan and just making the scene even worse. And Buu starts stepping forward to enact his own revenge on these doofuses. That is until Hercule begins laying down an ass whooping of his own on these two idiots. And I love that it's Mr. Satan that steps in to kind of lay down the law on these guys.
I 100% agree with you. I mean, we basically get the Z fighters' perspective on most things, right? So we kind of, the audience in a large way views Mr. Satan as a doofus, but we kind of forget that he's the world champion. I mean, he's the world champion this time because 18 kind of gave it to him, but the time that he won it before that, he actually won it legitimately, like before Cell. So he's a pretty damn good fighter. Like, he is a strong human by normal people's standards, and he just whoops this guy's ass without any problem.
Which I love, right? He is the champion, like you're saying. And I guess more like traditional or normal martial arts, he's the best in the world, or arguably the best in the world. He hasn't really had access to, ki energy or any of that crazy, mysticism that the rest of our fighters have, or sometimes alien powers. So he is a badass, and I'm glad we get to actually see that in action. And Boo notices his friend kind of stepping up to the plate for him, and it actually kind of calms him down for a second. And I like that they're kind of building this relationship where Boo kind of notices that Mr. Satan's not being mean to him. He actually likes him. So Boo decides to make Mr. Satan his friend, or at least he's having fun with him. And then Mr. Satan sees that Boo's not like an evil creature. He's just kind of like a child who's been misdirected. And so he actually starts feeling empathy for Boo. And then when he sees Boo experience this loss and experience this pain, he feels that rage and steps up to the plate for his friend. It's really cool kind of seeing this microcosm of a story arc kind of come to fruition. And it's well told. This is actually something that I think Toriyama did very well, which is making you feel like sorry or feel emotion towards this kind of killing machine monster.
100%. It ties into what we talked about last episode with the blind kid that Boo healed his blindness, and the kid was like he didn't have any reason to be afraid of Boo, and so he treated Boo with kindness in return. Same thing with the dog. Boo healed the dog, and so the dog was like, oh, I like you. I don't have any reason to be afraid of you. And Mr. Satan is the person who is actually kind of getting to see this firsthand. Like, if Boo is treated with kindness, he returns those actions with kindness himself, or at least his interpretation of kindness anyway.
Well, after Mr. Satan lays down the whooping of this guy's lifetime, he rushes back over to the bloody body of the little puppers, and he notices that it's still drawing breath. This animal is still alive, and he rushes Boo over to heal up the puppy. And after a dramatic pause, the dog kind of springs back to life, and there's a moment of celebration where they're actually holding hands and dancing around together. Since I don't know if you noticed this, but wasn't the dog called B before? And did they give it a name this time? Because I don't remember hearing it.
I almost called it B just a second ago, and I don't think that they named it this time in Kai. In the original Funimation dub, it was named B. But yeah, I haven't heard that name said at all.
Yeah, and I kind of refrained from saying B because I kind of thought there'd be like a name reveal at some point, but no, it never happens. So I might be interjecting the name B in here at some point. That's because in the original series, they gave it a name. In Kai, I don't think they name it at all. But yeah, that dog's name is B technically, but technically not in Kai.
In my brain, it's B. So yeah, I think of the dog as B.
Okay, cool. All right. So we flip back over to the lookout, and we see that Piccolo is all business. He's no nonsense with Trunks and Goten. And he wants to keep that training regiment going. The entire planet's on the line. Every life on Earth is on the line. But this is shut down by their mothers, who demanded that he give their boys a break. And probably rightfully so. They're tired.
I love this. This is exactly what I was talking about with like the crazy peaks and troughs in terms of drama versus comedy, because Piccolo is, originally was thought to be a demon, was an evil monster, if you want to call him that, and, kidnapped Gohan and trained Gohan in the wilderness to fight dinosaurs and fend for himself. And now he's having to train Goten and Trunks while their mothers are present, and they're just reaming Piccolo verbally, like, leave our children alone. You have to give them a break.
Oh my God. I mean, it's so funny. But I mean, I understand Piccolo where he's coming from. It's like, hey, there's no time for breaks. We need to be prepared for Boo. It's all or nothing, all hands on deck at this point.
100%. Yeah. I mean, Piccolo, you can kind of tell that Piccolo's stressed out, right? And rightly so, because in his mind, he can't do anything about this beyond training the boys and making sure they're on task. The only people who can actively fight Boo in his mind right now are the boys. And that, we're going to find out, is really scaring Piccolo. He's stressed that they aren't taking it seriously enough.
So, pop quiz question. What year did Kai, the final chapters, come out?
Ooh, I think it was, man, was it 2014? I think I'd have to double check, but I'm pretty sure it's 2013, 2014.
That sounds about right. Either way too late for us to make this joke. So we flip over to the Supreme Kai, who's continuing his weird ritual thing with Gohan, and he sparks up a conversation discussing whether or not his quote unquote handful of Bulma is going to be good. Man, I'm glad this made it into the cut.
Man, I made a note about this too because there were lots of jokes about getting a handful of boobies, and I was like, wow.
You know, I expect some of those tropes and some of those jokes to some degree, but man, they really laid it on thick this time.
We talked about it last time. It was in the original Funimation dub. They might have changed it from the manga, which is maybe why they changed it back, but they had in the Funimation dub originally said that he was going to get a kiss from Bulma, and it's like, okay, it's a little bit weird, but it's not like cringy as bad, I guess. But
I mean,
shifting to just
it's a pretty tame way, or a much tamer way than this on getting the pervy old man joke across, right?
yeah, just going multiple times, being like, hey, so about them boobies I'm gonna grab is just like, this is weird.
Yeah, so the only reason I brought it up is because of how deep they went into that joke this time. But
yeah, it's a pretty long scene.
So Buu, Hercule, and the puppers are all having fun now because they're all reunited. They're having a great time. And we get this moment where we see Mr. Satan go to kind of retire and hit the hay. And he comes across that picture he took of Buu where he kind of like tricked him into acting like he was dead so he could put that victory pose above him, you know, to show off to the rest of the world that he defeated the big scary monster. And he kind of reflects on his journey with Buu, right? How he encountered him, thought he was a monster, thought about killing him, and then he kind of got to know Buu and realized that he was actually just a big child. And so he feels kind of, I guess, not right about this picture, not right about that situation and that lie specifically. And I think he's built his own empathy towards Buu. At first, he might have been trying to take advantage of it, but he ended up befriending Buu in the process anyway. And so we see him actually tear up this photo and then go out so that way he can cook Buu some yummy yums, which he's demanding.
I will 100% continue to spout that I love Mr. Satan's story arc in the Buu arc. It is so good.
Can I go ahead and say, and this might be a little bit of a spoiler, I think his content in all the episodes we're covering tonight is the best content.
Probably. Yeah. I would not disagree with that. He like we as the audience think of him, especially from the Cell arc, we think of him as a goofball, we think of him as an arrogant, egotistical asshole. Even through the world tournament that we just kind of watched in the Buu arc, he was continuing to be like a slime ball, kind of underhanded tactics to try to win or, you know, keep face in front of the audience. And now we're getting to see this other side of him where it's like, okay, yeah, he was here to kill Buu in these kind of underhanded ways. But then when he saw that humanity side of Buu, we kind of get to see his underlying humanity as well. And his, like you said, Dayton, his kind of empathy and compassion for Buu for being just effectively a misguided child.
Yeah, it's really interesting seeing that. And I don't know, it adds shades of color to Mr. Satan's character where you're like, all right, well, maybe, I don't know, maybe he's a big boisterous jerk like that because he wants the attention, and he's doing it not because he's necessarily feeding his ego, which there's probably a part of that, but maybe he just wants to be loved, and that's kind of his big motivator. Is he wants the world to love him. He wants people to love him. And so that's why he goes out and he gets all the cameras on him and he gets all the attention and he wins the tournaments and he does all this other stuff, right? He wants to be loved. I don't know. I'm just going off on a tangent here.
No, I love that. He's a very flawed character, right? Like he's got issues, but in the end he he's trying to do things that he views as being good. And we kind of get to see him, like you said, he's cooking Boo meals. He even takes a bath with Boo. Boo damn near drowns him because he thinks it's a game. But again, Boo is like, that's Boo's way of showing affection. He doesn't realize that he's hurting Mr. Satan. And all of this kind of culminates in our young shooter who killed or almost killed B, the dog, coming back in through the window. He's not finished yet. However, he is going to shoot Mr. Satan through the chest, and that is going to kind of rile up our big pink friend here.
Yeah, Boo comes across his dying friend, and we once again see him beginning to kind of bubble over in anger. We get the steam pouring out of those porous holes in his body. We get that tea kettle effect, and he's fighting through this anger, but while he's doing it, he's able to heal Mr. Satan back up to health. But once Mr. Satan stands on his feet, Boo continues to almost like struggle and fight against himself. And Mr. Satan, of course, shows some concern for his friend. He's like, hey, everything's all right. We'll get this taken care of. It's okay, Boo. And Boo screams at him that he needs to leave or he's going to die. And we see Boo start stumbling out of the house, just kind of, struggling with his own body as he forces himself to move. And we see this steam just start pouring from him. And eventually the steam starts culminating in the air and condensing, and eventually it forms another Boo-like character. However, this one appears much more differently than Boo. He's very thin. We don't have that vibrant pink color. He's more of this gray kind of lifeless looking being. Yeah, I've got to say, this character looks pretty darn evil. I think someone even points out that he's evil at some point around this time. But yeah, we now have Evil Buu, unless there's a different name for this guy who has just arrived on the scene.
No, this one is kind of identified as Evil Buu. I want to zoom in for just a split second on what you described as somebody coming in and telling us this Buu is evil, because this part, I think, is so confusing for audiences that they felt it necessary to have the narrator come in here and describe what happened with Buu splitting, that his evil essence created another Evil Buu, and now the original Majin Buu or Fat Buu that we know is more like left with just innocence and no evil in himself. But I love that they felt the need to narrate that to us.
Actually, I think there's a couple moments in the show where there's kind of like middle of the episode narration about what's going on. You're like, oh wow, this episode's ending early, and you're like, oh no, this is just the middle of the episode and you're telling me something. Okay, cool, let's keep going.
Yeah, there were a couple of spots where I was like, oh, is the episode over already? And no, it was like the little like commercial break spot.
It's pretty funny. But yeah, we've got Evil Buu on scene, and his first evil act is flying up to dumb sniper shooter man and just blasting him away. So as far as I know, I've seen this guy do one thing and it's awesome. He's actually a hero for now.
I mean, this one, it maybe isn't quite as graphic as some of the other deaths, but man, I feel like it hits with impact, because the guy turns around and shoots Evil Buu with a gun, which does nothing. And then Evil Buu just like extends a hand, and this massive energy blast like squishes the man against the rock and then vaporizes him. It's like, I mean, like you said, props to this guy for killing the shooter guy, because fuck that guy. But it's also like, these are some brutal deaths that we're getting to see in this arc.
Yeah, and this all bleeds over in episode 142, which is Buu Gobbles Up Buu, Onslaught of the New Majin. And with Mr. Sniper Man blasted off scene, and I want to reiterate, everyone's happy that guy died. No one likes that guy. We are now just left with Mr. Satan and Puppers, who are hiding off scene, Buu and this new Evil Buu, who are staring each other down. And things pretty quickly start coming to blows between these two.
Yeah, our Fat Boo he's the one who kind of like goes on the aggressive, but Evil Boo dodges every blow that Fat Boo can throw at him. Evil Boo then just starts pummeling Fat Boo. And even when Fat Boo starts whipping out some of his strange techniques, like throwing part of his body to wrap up Evil Boo breaks out of it, even goes so far as to suck up the pieces of Fat Boo and just eat them.
Yeah, it's a really bizarre battle between these two strange beings, right? So strange things are happening. And Piccolo, he stands on the lookout and he's kind of reaching out and sensing everything that's happening. And he more or less narrates that when Boo and this Evil Boo split apart, Evil Boo took the majority of power with him, and that this is a very one-sided affair.
Yeah, we as the audience basically get to see that. They kind of exchange ki blasts, and then Fat Boo, almost getting desperate, tries to turn Evil Boo into chocolate using the beam from his antenna. And Evil Boo, not even batting an eye, just blows it back, literally just with breath from his mouth, blows the beam back at Fat Boo, turning Fat Boo into chocolate, and then walks over and pops the Fat Boo chocolate bar into his mouth.
I love it when characters, because we've seen it a couple times before, where a character will take in a breath and then just blow an attack back at their opponent. It's such a flex, right? It's such a just like, you mean nothing to me. I don't even need to use my physical body to fight you.
Yeah, no, I agree. Those are super fun moments. And yeah, it does kind of give a very good indication as to where the power balance lies between these two.
Yeah, and right now, the power balance is pretty one-sided, considering Pink Boo was devoured by Evil Boo. And it's at this point where there's kind of a momentary pause, and then we see Evil Boo kind of lurch back and start yelling, and we see steam pouring out of his body. But rather than the normal, kind of clear white steam that you would see, this steam is actually pink, and it begins to envelop his entire body. And eventually, we see the steam give way, and we see a third Boo, except this one is pink like the original Fat Boo, but he appears much more tone and in shape. This is the first one who looks like he hits the gym, But the one big defining factor of this new Boo are these black eyes with little white pupils. It's very terrifying.
Yeah, it has a great effect. This is what is, I don't think they call him this in the show, but what it's commonly referred to as Super Boo. And I think even our heroes, kind of sensing him, give emphasis to the fact that, oh, Majin Buu this version of Boo is even stronger than the Boo that got released by Babidi, and this is going to be real bad.
Yeah. We see Super Boo kind of lean back and give out this colossal roar that I think can even be heard from the planet of the Kais, where Gohan and Goku are. And this is a measuring stick moment, right? It's look at how powerful this new Boo is. We can sense his energy, and we can even hear him from a far distant planet. And okay, do you want to describe this next scene that happens? Because it's another gruesome one.
It's so good. This is even better than the last one. But we almost didn't even talk about this guy. Basically, the sniper who shot the dog, he had a buddy with him, an older man, who is basically of very little consequence, except for this scene, because he tries to shoot Super Boo with a gun, and of course doesn't work. And so Super Boo flies over, stretching out his pink gummy body, and just begins to pour himself into the man's gullet, going down into his stomach. You see his stomach begin to swell and distend. up to the point where his body can no longer contain all the mass of Buu to just fully explode the man from the inside. It's gruesome and it's awesome.
It's brutal. I mean, there was moments earlier where Bobbity would throw like this weird stuff on people that would cause them to like bulk out to the point where they would explode. This is right in that same vein. I don't know why this stuff bothers me so much, but it is really gross. Like, it freaks me out, man.
The visuals are great. Like, it's tough to watch. Like, and it's not even really gory. Like, you don't see a bunch of his blood or viscera or anything. It's just watching his body distort like that is disturbing.
Yeah, I don't like seeing people go out of whack like that. So I'm going to move on. And this is where Super Buu sets his eyes on his next prize, which is Hercule and the puppers. We see him charge in, just laughing as he gets ready to go in the attack. But he's halted right before he's able to strike any sort of blow. And we get the strong feeling that there's still a small part of that good old Jolly Buu still left inside this new Evil Buu, and it prevents him from actually causing any harm to Mr. Satan and the puppy.
Yeah. This is going to be important because there's still some essence of the original Buu who had some feelings for Mr. Satan, but this turns quickly into our new Super Buu flying across the planet directly to Kami's lookout and landing there amongst our Z fighters.
I love this because when Super Buu arrives, he just starts screaming, "Produce!" And Piccolo and everyone's just like, "Well, I don't know what that means. What do you want?" He just says, "Produce!" And finally, Piccolo is able to get out of him that he wants the challenger he was promised to be produced. And Piccolo's pleading with Buu like, "Hey, you said that you would give us 2 days and it's barely been one. Like, he's not ready." But Buu has changed his mind. And Piccolo's forced into some desperate decision making at this point because the boys aren't ready, right? They've been working on the fusion technique, but they still don't quite have it down. And so Piccolo makes an offer with Buu, which is, why don't you go and kill the rest of the planet to keep yourself entertained to give us the time we need? And I mean, everyone else is kind of aghast, but it's a tactical move because he knows he's got the Dragon Balls on his side.
It's wild. Yeah, he has very few options available to him here, right? And so he basically says, "Buu, why don't you kill some time by committing mass genocide and wiping out the remaining 20% of the population that's still out there?" But yeah, the goal is to undo the carnage that Buu has already wrought upon the Earth with the Dragon Balls. But this just gets Buu kind of circling around the lookout, kind of like looking out, kind of assessing, like he's assessing something, and eventually comes to a stop, raises his hand, and starts shooting energy blasts out from the lookout across the Earth.
Yes,
Wow.
And this goes into episode 143, which is Headlong Rush into Catastrophe, a 1-hour time limit. And I mean, Buu does all this with a smirk on his face as these energy beams begin pouring out from his palms, spilling in all directions from the lookout. And we find out that each of these beams actually has an intended target, as each of them seems to find somebody on the planet, killing them. And as these beams reach across the planet, we find that it's wiping out the entirety of Earth's population, with the exception of Mr. Satan. He's the only one who seems to be spared from all of these beams.
He is the only one who's spared deliberately. We do also kind of see Chaozu and Tien are able to kind of dodge the attacks as best as we can tell. So they might have kind of survived through it as well. But yeah, Mr. Satan was specifically not targeted. However, this is Buu's human extinction attack, which quite literally kills everyone else on the planet. Whoever's not on the lookout, except for maybe Tien, Chaozu, and Mr. Satan, is wiped out.
I do like that once this happens, Piccolo actually has a moment of internal reflection where he asks the planet to forgive him and that he vows to bring them all back with the Dragon Balls. So I do like that Piccolo's like, man, I'm sorry. I'm sorry this happened to all of you, but it's a gamble I had to make because we had no other choice. And I mean, if there's one thing they're doing really well right now, it's definitely building up the drama of the situation, right? Now everyone else on the planet is dead. Buu is on the lookout. Goku and Gohan are off on a different planet. Things are about as low as they can get at this point.
Yeah, I really like the tension that they build in this part of the arc. I was trying to think in my head how I would compare it or rate it compared to like some of the other arcs in Z. Frieza has some really good tension too. And I think Cell has some decent tension and as well as the Saiyan arc, but the fact that the whole planet, everybody on the planet aside from maybe 24 people at most is wiped out. This is wild. And this is another scene where while it's not necessarily gory, we watch people get murdered en masse on screen. They get holes punched through them by these energy attacks. So again, this is dark for Dragon Ball Z. This is heavy.
Yeah, and it's all Piccolo can do at this point is just beg. He begs for more time from Buu. And we see Videl kind of step out at this point and challenge Buu on his impatience. And as Buu goes to punish her for stepping out of line, Piccolo wisely points out that this is the daughter of Mr. Satan. And this little fact is enough for Buu to agree to wait an hour until he kills the rest of them.
Yeah, he wants, like you said, he wants a fun fight. He wants to fight. What he doesn't know is Gotenks at this point. But he does, thanks to Videl intervening and Piccolo's quick thinking, Buu agrees to wait 1 hour, which he's given an hourglass by Piccolo, which is kind of fun. Just getting to see Buu squat down and just watch the sand drip down from this hourglass.
Well, the extinction of Earth's population doesn't go unnoticed, as the Supreme Kai senses the population of Earth vanish. And this starts pushing Gohan's impatience over the edge. We see him erupt in this new mysterious inner power. And this is kind of our reveal that the ritual seems to be working. And Gohan noticing this kind of eruption of power that he didn't realize he had. We see him kind of be humbled and sit down, and yeah, we're back to the power up ritual. So keep being patient, Gohan. It'll eventually be done.
Yeah, I mean, at least we know it's doing something, but the plan on the lookout now is Goten and Trunks are going to go into the hyperbolic time chamber. So with an hour, that'll give them multiple days that they can train without Buu bothering them. And in the interim, though, before they're able to dip into the chamber, Chi-Chi takes it upon herself to walk out to Majin Buu, slap him in the face, and yell at him for taking her son Gohan from her. And Buu retaliates by turning her into an egg.
You know, I don't know why, but I actually thought the scene was kind of funny.
Did you? Man, the Goten's response to this had me in tears.
I don't know. The thing I'm starting to run into a little bit though with this with the Buu arc is that I feel like life is starting to become kind of cheap in Dragon Ball. And that's one thing that I'm starting to experience at this point, that characters just get killed and like we just watch the entire human population get wiped out. And we already know that the game plan is to bring them all back with the Dragon Balls. I don't know. I feel like I'm starting to get kind of emotionally tapped out for the loss of life.
I could understand that. Admittedly, it's not Chi-Chi's death that really hit me emotionally. It was feeling and hearing and seeing Goten's emotional response to watching his mother die. Like, he not only sees her get turned into an egg, he then watches Buu stomp onto that egg, crushing it and smearing it across the lookout. And Goten is just in tears as he almost goes out to fight Buu right then and there.
I don't know. I just watching Boo go egg and then turn her into an egg and step on her. I don't know. It just made me laugh. It's just like, what? You turned her into an egg? Okay. And I don't know. I get Goten's response. And for me, this is sometimes something that happens in Dragon Ball where I feel like sometimes they have an emotion because you know they should have that emotion. And sometimes the emotion actually hits me. This is one of those scenes where I understood the emotion that Goten was having, but I wasn't hit by it. There are some scenes in Dragon Ball where it really hits me or catches me a different way. For some reason, this one it didn't reach me. Goten was upset, and then Piccolo said, well, all right, well, you need to train now. And then Goten said, yep. And so I didn't really buy into it, but I get how you could. For some reason, this one just didn't hit me.
That's fair. I mean, Dragon Ball does make life cheap, right? Like, people dying is common fare for Dragon Ball, and people coming back to life because of the Dragon Balls is, in my opinion, a problem with Dragon Ball and with its storytelling, unfortunately. But I actually do like this. I like we watch Goten and Trunks go into the chamber, the hyperbolic time chamber, and Trunks is kind of like being casual, just checking out the place, looking for food. Goten, though, I mean, Goten has, in his mind, lost his brother. His father went back to heaven, and his mother got killed in front of his eyes. And so Goten is full on pushing this training to its limit. He is like ready to go and dedicated to taking down the monster that is Buu right now.
Which I do like that, but I don't know. I still don't know if like 30 seconds later you would be just focused and determined. I think you would still be heartbroken. Like I said, all this just feels like a storytelling tool to give Goten more focus or something.
Yeah, I will say that the pacing for it felt a little bit weird to me, and maybe that's kind of what didn't hit you, or why it didn't hit you as well. I can't quite remember in the original if this scene was spread out a little bit more or extended out a little bit more, but it does feel a little bit rushed.
Yeah. Also, I think Chi-Chi being an egg really takes some of the weight of what actually happened off of, I guess, my shoulders or my emotional base, where it's just like, well, he turned her into an egg and stepped on her.
There is something almost like comically bizarre about that, or just showing how insignificant she is, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably a part of it, is just how little Buu cares about life. And there's definitely an aspect of that might be influencing the situation where, I mean, the focus could be Goten's mom dying, but for me, the focus was just Buu's just disregard for the life of others. And yeah, there's a couple different things to take on this, but I don't want to get held up for too much longer, because we see Videl approaching Piccolo at this point, and he actually asks him about using her father's name in front of Buu to convince him to wait. And Piccolo explains to her that her dad actually used humor and friendship to gain Buu's trust. And in doing so, he actually almost saved the world. And so Videl's kind of actually impressed with her dad, who at this point, probably up till this point, has kind of been struggling with the image of her father after meeting all the Z fighters and learning what actually happened with Cell. And so this is probably, I mean, even if it's just a little offshoot side story, like just a line for Videl, it probably helps reinforce that admiration for her father.
I like this a lot. I like the way that Piccolo portrays Mr. Satan as well. But yeah, I mean, Fidel's whole fucking worldview has been flipped upside down within a very short time span. And that includes the view of her father. So it's nice that she does get that little bit of reinforcement, positive reinforcement in regards to the person that her father is. But it doesn't help us in this moment because Buu is out of patience, and it has not even been an hour yet. And Buu says, I'm done waiting. Take me to this strong fighter now, or I kill all of you.
Yeah, Boo is screaming like a child and demanding that he be brought to this fighter. And Piccolo's hands are tied. He doesn't really have a choice. Boo holds all the cards right now. And so he agrees. And he says, yep, all right. If you're ready, I'll take you to the fighter. And Boo kind of smirks and he falls in line behind Piccolo. And our green man begins leading this monster, this terrible pink monster, through the lookout towards the hyperbolic time chamber where our young heroes are training. And we see Dende and Bulma and the rest of the crew on the lookout kind of talking about the possible intentions of Piccolo, because it almost feels like he's kind of selling the boys out, and they all know that he's not going to be ready. So what the hell is he going to do? And Dende kind of puts together that Piccolo's plan is likely that he's going to lead Boo to the boys in the hyperbolic time chamber. And then if things go south, he could destroy the entrance to it, trapping all of them in that other dimension for the rest of eternity.
It's smart, man. It's a great backup plan. In fact, it's a great addition to the plan, because he's already concerned that Goten and Trunks won't be able to defeat especially this new version of Boo. And so at least putting themselves in a position where they can trap Boo regardless of whether they can defeat him, and then use the Dragon Balls to undo everything that Boo has done. It's a good idea. And Piccolo is, always touted as one of our smartest characters. So
I love it. Piccolo is an excellent tactician. I love all the decisions he's making in the Boo series. I think he's probably, if I had to pick my favorite character up to this point, it's got to be Piccolo. He's just, everything he's done has been sound, and you understand where he's coming from. And we see that character growth where he's, he feels bad for some of the decisions he's making, but these are decisions that have to be made in his eyes. I don't know. I love his character.
I very much agree. There is one point in this set of episodes that I really don't like the writing for Piccolo's character on it. We'll talk about it when we get to it. But up to this point, I very much agree with you. I really like Piccolo. I mean, kind of like in a similar way to Goku, but with a different personality, is taking on the role of mentor, because Piccolo is completely outclassed in terms of actually contributing as a fighter. So he has to kind of take that mentor role.
Well, the one thing that's kind of pointed out before we get into the next episode is that people kind of notice that Piccolo's taking the scenic route to the hyperbolic time chamber. So they don't know what that's about, but yeah, someone makes a note of that as we head into episode 144. Training complete. You're finished now, Majin Buu.
Yeah, we do get a brief little scene watching Mr. Satan kind of make his way across the barren wasteland that is the Earth. We also kind of get a scene with Goten and Trunks in the hyperbolic time chamber, and they're kind of discussing their plan. I'll be honest, I don't like this scene because I can't remember if this was in the original Funimation dub or maybe the dialogue was different, but they basically express, okay, we already got beyond Super Saiyan, so that's kind of revealed. We don't know if that means 2 or 3 or what, but they do say, okay, we're going to fight and pretend that we're not strong enough to take on Boo, and then at the last minute we'll go into our big transformation and it'll be real dramatic. And I I don't think that was expressed to the audience ahead of time before in the original. And so I kind of like that being like I like that being revealed to us in the fight rather than being told to us outright.
It's interesting-ish to me. Just because I don't know. The whole arrogance of Gotenks, I liked it at first, but it starts getting a little old after a while where it's like, all right, can this character actually freaking grow? And so, like, watching this scene happen, I was like, oh, god damn it. All right, here we go. And I think what the scene's trying to do is make sense of why Gotenks is so freaking arrogant. And we get to see the two boys powering up and getting stronger, and we get to see that power go to their heads. That's the whole point of this scene, is being like, all right, this is where the arrogance comes from. And I do agree with you that I probably like it a little better when you find out that they're doing all this like BS in the middle of the battle. But it's also a trope with Gotenks that I think starts getting old after a while. And you're like, okay, yep, I get it. They're arrogant, but at the same time, should they have learned their lesson at least twice now about being arrogant?
I totally agree with you. We'll talk about that more as we get into the Gotenks stuff, because it does get grating after a while. But Piccolo does manage to buy some time. He does also communicate to the boys, letting them know that Buu is coming. And so the boys get time to rest. And however, Piccolo has to take Buu into the chamber. Buu is kind of demanding it. And this kind of turns into Buu stepping in, seeing the boys, and being like, I was tricked. And there is kind of a funny gag here as the boys try to fuse. Buu just dives in and punches Trunks right in the face.
I did have a good laugh about that. Because Trunks is, of course, like upset because you didn't let him finish. You didn't let him do his thing. And what kind of jerk does that? He's like, I don't know. I like that gag. That's a good, staying in character, a kid being a kid situation. It wasn't really at the expense of anybody. And it's also something that we all kind of wish everyone would do, right? Like, why would you let people power up? Why would you let them transform or do whatever? And Buu does that and then is scolded for it.
There's so many layers. Like, I'm glad that you said that too, because I love this not only as a gag, but I love it as like a meta commentary on all of the characters in Dragon Ball, where they just stand around while people power up or transform, and then they have to fight them at an even stronger level.
It's so funny. So Trunks scolds him and says, hey, we need a minute to finish. Like, what are you doing? Is this amateur hour? And so Trunks and Goten do their fusion dance. And yeah, so we've got Gotenks, and we see Gotenks unleash a flurry of blows into Boo's face. Like, the fighting kicks off, and Buu is just kind of looking at Gotenks with boredom in his eyes, asking if he's allowed to fight yet, which cracks me the hell up.
Yeah, again, the troughs and valleys of the drama versus the comedy here. Like, this is a life and death. Like, the earth and all the people of the earth are on the line, and we're having gags like Buu has not been told he can fight yet, so he's not actually engaging.
So Gotenks, of course, is upset about being asked if he's allowed to fight. And so he kicks things up and he starts pulling out all of these like crazy childish named moves. He starts throwing dynamite kicks and rolling thunder punches, and Boo's kind of playing along, even giving Gotenks advice on where to hit him with these techniques. And I mean, it's pretty fun.
Some of these are fun. I actually just realized too, Dynamite Kick is one of Mr. Satan's moves.
Oh, is it? Oh, it is, isn't it?
Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but I wonder if Trunks or Goten saw that from Mr. Satan and took the name, because yeah, that's funny. I just thought about that. But some of these moves are fun. Some of them are silly. Like, Gotenks' Dynamite Kick quite literally explodes upon impact, which is fun. He has his, I don't even remember what this one's called, but like the helicopter punch or whatever. It's dozens of just ridiculous attack after attack that children would come up with. I enjoy that part of it.
I do want to point out too that this actually makes sense to me because no one was training them while they're in the hyperbolic time chamber. They're training by themselves. And so this is stuff they came up with and thought was good.
Yeah. Most of these too are like, I mean, he quite literally puts fingers on his head and charges Buu as a bull. A lot of them are just like, he's like miracle super punch, and it's just like a hook punch. It's nothing spectacular. He just adds names to a bunch of ridiculous moves.
And Piccolo notices all of this and is just face palming, just so ashamed of how ridiculous these two boys are. And Gotenks notices and actually has to walk over and drag Piccolo aside and tell him, hey, this is all part of the plan, all right? Like, everything is fine.
There's even a gag where Gotenks pulls a little piece of paper out of his vest, like, oh yeah, what was the next move that I had named? Like, he can't remember all of them. Like, I enjoy, as of this moment, I enjoy these gags. They're fun. But this is, I mean, Gotenks has a limited time, right? He only has 30 minutes that he can be in this transformation. So Piccolo's like, all right, we're running out of time. You got to do something. If you can beat Buu, you got to do it now.
And thankfully, we're going to find out that a 30-minute transformation is good enough for about 3 episodes, 3 20-minute episodes. But Gotenks, he goes on the attack once more after Piccolo kind of tells him to get serious, but Buu swats him aside and calls him weak. And this gets under Gotenks' skin, and with some flair and pizzazz, because, you got to add to the drama a little bit, he pops up to Super Saiyan. And I think there was a comment earlier when they first fused that they had to be in Super Saiyan if they wanted to be Super Saiyan while fused, but that more or less gets addressed or hand waved at this point. I don't know what you want to call it. We don't really get to see any sort of training or anything that shows them overcoming it. They can just do it now.
I think my kind of interpretation of that is that the Goten, Trunks, and Piccolo, they don't understand the fusion very well. So they are making a lot of assumptions about it because Goku had maybe an hour to show them the dance and did not give them hardly any details about it beyond just showing them the dance itself. And so Piccolo kind of made an assumption that they had to be Super Saiyan so that they can be Super Saiyan when they fuse, but they're basically treated as just like their own entity that can transform once they're fused, as best we can tell at this point.
Well, from here, Gotenks decides to pick his next signature technique, which is the Galactic Donut. A ring of energy that is summoned and slowly positioned around Buu, who screams out as he struggles against the ring as it squeezes him.
It's funny because you're saying this as if you're like bored with this attack or whatever. I actually really like this attack.
My thing is, we've seen this style of technique like 3 or 4 times at this point, so it's whatever.
That's fair. I don't know if we see it. We don't see it quite in this fashion. Like, this one is specifically an energy ring, and you almost get the impression that if it kept squeezing, like, to me, the impression I get is that it's supposed to squeeze the life out of Buu or like sever him in half. However, Buu easily breaks out of it and is kind of like, well, kind of moving into the next episode, basically says,
I do want to point out that Vegeta literally held Goku against some rocks with energy rings earlier in this Buu saga. So we've already seen it this series.
That's a good point. Yeah, those are pretty similar, though not meant to like crush and sever him. Yeah.
Well, all this goes into episode 145, eliminating Buu with Ghosts, a knockout kamikaze attack. And right away in this episode, Buu laughs and breaks out of the ring and claims that it's now his turn to attack. And he begins just knocking the crap out of Gotenks.
Yeah. I mean, this is the first time he's really gone on the offensive, I guess, at least against Gotenks. And even with Gotenks in Super Saiyan, Buu is just beating the tar out of him. There's kind of a gag of Gotenks getting knocked into the tub with Piccolo. I mean, they kind of clash heads at one point, and Piccolo's like, hey, if you have something you can use, like, you need to use it now. And so Gotenks is like, all right, on to the next move. And these, like, once he's in Super Saiyan, these kind of feel like his actual techniques, if you want to say that, like the Galactic Donut. And now we're going to get to see the Super Ghost Kamikaze attack.
Yes, this is his newest, most ultimatist technique. And we see him breathe in deeply and then exhale this white bubble that floats off from his mouth and forms into his own ghostly spitting image. And we see this spitting image have its own like wisp tail and everything. It's like a cartoon ghost version of himself. I know I got kind of annoyed with some of these techniques because they were coming out for so long and so rapid fire. But now we get to the good stuff. I consider this his most iconic technique, and I freaking love this thing. It is so much fun.
Yeah, this might be my favorite technique of his. I like the Galactic Donut for like its utility, but this one is super cool as
it's very unique. There's nothing else like it really in Dragon Ball.
Yeah, 100%. Those are some of the reasons why I like Gotenks, is because he has actual unique techniques like the donut and the kamikaze attack, but he sends the ghost flying at Buu, and Buu basically just punches the thing, trying to, like, okay, I'm just going to destroy it. But we see the ghost kind of smirk and then immediately on impact explode, putting a pretty heavy impact on Buu, like hurting his arm and, damaging him quite a bit in the moment.
I do like the way Buu looks when he's really beat up like that, where you see his body is kind of like misshapen and barely holding its form. It's almost like he's like, I don't know, like ice cream that's slightly melted, and we see like these lumps in his head. He's all sorts of distorted and gross looking. They do a great job of kind of having fun with the physical characteristics of Buu when he's taking damage and when he's fighting and when he's doing all sorts of weird stuff.
That's a great way to describe it. Yeah, I agree with you. I do like the way that he's drawn in that way. We do kind of get a bit of a cutaway. Honestly, I would normally skip over this sort of scene, but I really like this emotional bit where Bulma is kind of venting to Roshi and Krillin, as they can't, on the outside can't see what's going on with this fight, so they're kind of stressed about it. But they're talking about the potential for Piccolo destroying the door to the hyperbolic time chamber to trap Buu in there, in the event that Gotenks is unable to beat Buu. And then Bulma is basically like, oh, well, what's going to happen to the boys then? And they're like, well, they'll die and we'll wish them back with the Dragon Balls. And she's like, that is not okay. They're children. It doesn't matter that we can undo the fact that they get killed. They're still 7 and 8-year-old boys who are going to get killed by this monster and then get brought back to life. And I feel like this is something that we don't really talk about much, and she doesn't even quite hit on this point. But how traumatic would that be to get killed like that and then get brought back to life? Like, you still died. That's a big deal.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? And I think back to when Gohan was young and he was fighting the Ginyu Force and he had his neck snapped. Just it was so visceral and it was so disturbing because you see like the life all but completely leave his eyes as he just kind of convulses a little bit on the ground. And for some reason that scene on Namek still invokes emotion out of me when I think about it. And seeing something like that happen to Goten or Trunks would make my hair stand on end sort of thing. It would make me feel emotion. And so I definitely get the point that Bulma's hitting on. I'm going to go ahead and bring it up again. All of this kind of doesn't weigh as much because the entirety of the planet was just murdered. And so your kid dying kind of still is just a drop in the ocean for me, or the trauma your kid's going to have still a drop in the ocean to me, because who literally killed like infants and babies and entire families. And like, can you imagine the amount of death at Buu's hands? How terrible extincting the entire planet was. I don't know. It's for some reason, when you set the stakes that high, I struggle to feel emotion towards your kid because how many other kids went through that?
Yeah, it's tricky. Like maybe that's one of the things where we're kind of getting into the parts where the Buu arc struggles, I think, because it feels like Akira Toriyama was trying to increase the tension, increase the stakes, like you said, Dayton. And it almost, like for you in particular, and probably for a lot of the audience, with the entire population on Earth wiped out, you almost get desensitized to the individuals. Like once an individual dies or something bad happens to them, I mean, you kind of described it as just another drop in the bucket. It's hard to feel that emotion, that concern, that empathy when you think about the billions of people who got murdered or turned into candy and then eaten. And so it's, I question whether Boo wiping out everybody on the planet was a good choice for the story or the stakes.
Yeah, it's you you set the I don't even know if you want to call it setting the stakes at this point because it's kind of already happened. Like
Mm.
stakes would imply that there's some sort of bet happening. But the deed's already been done. Humanity's extinct at this point. You're just holding on to see if you can bring them back. And so like the death of somebody kind of doesn't matter at this point because we've just had the death of I don't millions or billions. I don't know how many people are in Dragon Ball timeline. But it also feels weird because you're kind of like we're going through a lot of childish gags with the backdrop of human extinction. I find, and this is my big problem with the Boo saga, the tone I don't like the tone. The tone gets bad. I don't know what the tone should be right now because we're having two kind of childlike heroic level characters fighting, but humanity just went extinct. I don't know what I should be feeling right now. There's also not like a lot of depth to Boo as a character now. He is just kind of a killing machine who just extincted the entirety of the human population. So, I mean, and there aren't any other villainous characters or there aren't very many other characters who are relevant at this point. It's everything kind of boils down to this one thing, and I don't think it's handled well.
I don't disagree with you there. And I mean that's kind of what I was talking about earlier too, is the wild swings of the tone. But there are times in the Boo arc where I'm like, I think if you separate them, like separate the scenes, like okay, you have a dramatic and tragic scene here, and then you switch to a different scene, and that scene is kind of like goofy or a gag scene. I'm kind of okay with that. But at this point, they're blending those together in the same scene. Like we have this world ending monster fighting these children, and the children are taking this situation very lightly. And I think that's supposed to be where the comedy is coming in, like how juxtaposed those two things are. But I agree with you, Dayton, that I it kind of ruins the tone. It feels like it's just confusing for the audience. I think you said it best, where you don't know how you're supposed to feel, and that is like if there's a scene where I feel like oh man, I feel sad or concerned for the heroes, and then the next scene is them themselves taking it lightly. I'm like, well, should I even be concerned or sad? Like, I don't really know what's going on anymore.
Yeah, and I mean, I will say to give the all the Boo stuff some credit. Up until I would say all the story we covered up through our last episode of Instant Transmission, I actually really liked a lot. I think there's a lot of good elements to it, but I do think that it's at around this point that for me, it kind of starts going downhill. The tone starts feeling off. Um, I mean, how much of this episode is going to be Boo does this, and so they go here. Boo does this, and so this. Boo does this, and so this. And so everything's kind of just one character and everyone's kind of reaction to this one character. Whereas in most of the other stories we follow, there's been a lot of other actors who have had larger influences on things that have been happening. So like the android's involvement with Cell, or the Ginyu Force and all the different henchmen involved with Frieza. With Boo, I mean, Bobbity was kind of in effect for a while, but I mean, we're going to spend so much of this arc with it just being the Boo show and just following Boo. And Boo isn't the most interesting character to spend a lot of time with. He's not as interesting as Frieza or Cell in my eyes. So spending a lot of time with just like a kid character isn't a lot of fun. And that's what we're going to be doing for a lot of episodes now.
Yeah, those are good points. And I think that I agree with you, even as somebody who likes a lot of the Boo arc. This part is, in my opinion, this is only like a very small. This is maybe like we've probably the last set of episodes probably like crested the hill of quality or enjoyment. I think this is kind of like the gradual decline, because I still enjoy a lot of what they're doing here. I think at this point they're still working through, or at least sticking to, the buildup that they had with, okay, we've got these two solutions to the Majin Buu problem. Our first solution is going to be Goten and Trunks with fusion, and we're getting to see that play out here right now. And we still kind of have Gohan in the background, and we'll talk about it as we kind of move through, but I like how they kind of transition between those. And then, well, we know what happens later.
All right. Well, I'll share my complete thoughts on all this once we get to the end of tonight's episode. But
yeah,
let's continue the story forward as Piccolo tells Gotenks to finish the job before Buu can regenerate from the kamikaze attack. But our young, arrogant Saiyan fusion warrior has other plans and actually wants to draw out the fight. We see him spit out 10 more ghosts, and after bickering with them since they don't listen so well, he's able to get them all in line. And we see some goofball stuff happening, like the ghosts like shake hands and explode, and so the plan has to change a little bit, but Boo's now fully regenerated, and Gotenks has the ghost charge after Buu, but I don't know. I think all this stuff is kind of a mess at this point.
That's fair. I mean, I like getting to see the ghost kamikaze attack. They even have, in my opinion, I like this gag, where he sends 5 of his ghosts, like he's like, yeah, go attack Buu, and then they swerve off to the side and they start just in a huddle looking at something on the ground. They're like, hey, look at that. Oh, look, this thing's so cool. And it kind of gets Buu to come over to look at it, and then they just explode on Buu. Like, tone aside, I like that little gag, because it feels fitting for both the kids and the childlike Buu.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, once again, we've got 2 kids battling is what it feels like, where Buu doesn't have the faculties to be a child, and Gotenks literally is a child. So, I mean, that's how they're depicting it. I don't know. Yeah, it's fun, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it almost even looks like this works as the Buu explodes into pieces, then Piccolo and Gotenks kind of like zap the remaining pieces of Buu. However, even just the smoke from Majin Buu is able to recollect, and Buu seems no worse for wear from the attack. And then Buu goes fully on the offensive, like swinging Gotenks around with his antenna, slamming him into the ground. This results in Gotenks basically telling Piccolo, oh yeah, I'm all out of energy, I can't do anything, oh no, I don't know what's happening. And Piccolo activates Plan B and blows up the entrance to the hyperbolic time chamber.
Yep. So Gotenks was trying to play up the drama a little bit and make things a little bit cooler. And in doing so, made Piccolo believe that they were all doomed. And so now all three of them are trapped in a world of nothingness until they all die. And this bleeds into episode 146, Gotenks' ace in the hole transformation, Super Gotenks 3. Wow, that reveals a lot. But Gotenks and Buu start panicking at the thought of being stuck in this dimension, this terrible dimension of nothingness for the rest of their lives. Gotenks starts alluding to, like, well, I we weren't completely screwed. I still had more things I could do. And Buu is just freaking out over the idea of being bored and not being able to eat any more chocolate. And so he gives out this mighty roar as his frustration boils over, and it opens up a portal out. I hate this so much. I hate this with every ounce of my fiber. This is as awesome as Jiren and Super just being too strong to be affected by time. I hate this.
This was the moment that I really wanted to ask your opinion on, because I feel like a lot of the fan base does not like this moment. I don't think I do either. It almost feels like Akira Toriyama kind of like wrote himself into a hole, or into a corner rather, and he just needed some way for them to get out at that point, for Buu to get out. This feels just like, okay, well, if you're strong enough, you can rip holes between dimensions just by screaming. Like, it doesn't feel like it makes sense within the universe.
Yeah, there's been nothing to really allude to this. We haven't heard of Buu having any powers. We haven't heard of anyone really having any powers that relate to this. I mean, even Goku's instant transmission requires you to kind of be able to pick or picture and sense where you're going. And I haven't heard anything about this universe being like attached to our universe somehow or anything like that. As far as I know, this is just a completely different and separate universe. So I don't know. It just like, oh, well, he needed to leave, so he left. And it bothers me so bad. I do not like this.
No, I agree. This is just bad writing. This just feels, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel like it makes sense. There's nothing, like you said, nothing that alluded to it prior in the universe. If they would have given us some sort of idea that, maybe Buu is some sort of creature that has magic that can connect between planes of existence, like, okay, sure, whatever.
I mean,
but
I
no,
would
that
have
was
even
never given
taken
to us.
like Buu goes and inspects the doorway that Piccolo blew shut, and there's still a little bit of the doorway left, and so he like slips through it or something. But the specific route they took bothers me immensely.
Yeah, it could have been that. It could have been, I mean, Buu has the ability to heal people and creatures. Maybe he has the ability to like magically fix other things. Like, there's so many other ways this could have been done that would have been better.
Yeah. So either way, at this point, Buu has slipped through this little portal he made. That portal has shut, and now Buu is out on the lookout with all of our less strong Z fighters and family, while Gotenks and Piccolo are locked and shut inside the hyperbolic time chamber dimension.
Yeah, and this is, so Piccolo and Gotenks basically try screaming to no avail briefly. I want to hear your take on this next scene with Krillin, though. Do you want to give the play-by-play on this?
I do, actually, because I actually really like this scene. And the remaining Z fighters and their families are all standing on the lookout, and Majin Buu is just staring them down. And Krillin, kind of in a hushed, hurried breath, tells 18 to grab their daughter and hide. And he rushes Majin Buu while the rest of them run and take cover. I love that Krillin, he knows he's outmatched. He knows he's got nothing, but he's still a warrior at heart, and he's going to give his life for his family and friends so that way maybe they can get away. I love that heroic side of Krillin, and that he at least gets kind of a moment with Buu. He really hasn't gotten anything this entire series, but he's gotten at least a moment of bravery.
This, I mean, watching this brought tears to my eyes. Even thinking about it is making me teary eyed. This is a great moment for Krillin. And again, this lasts maybe 30 seconds tops. But Krillin's not even the most powerful person there. In fact, his wife is probably the most powerful person there, 18. And he basically stands up in front of his wife and child and says, 18, get Marin out of here. The moment I charge Buu, that should give you an opening. Like, it is. I mean, props to Krillin. I love getting to see him be a hero. He's wildly outclassed. Like, he's not even like half of a Piccolo, and Piccolo's outclassed by Buu. But he does everything that he possibly can to try to save his friends and family. I love it. It's so good.
Yeah, and I mean, he's kind of unceremoniously just turned into a piece of chocolate pretty much immediately after charging in. But I mean, he knew that fate was coming. He knew he never stood a chance, and he knew what he was charging into. That's what makes it so brave, and that's what kind of tugs at the heartstrings. You're just like, yeah, like he knew this was going to happen, but he was going to sacrifice everything so his family and friends maybe had a chance at getting out of there.
Yeah, it's beautiful. But yeah, his 5 seconds of bravery get him turned into a chocolate bar that Buu quickly devours. And even then, trying to give his friends and family that window, Krillin fails, as the very next people to get turned into chocolate are 18 and Marin.
Yeah, and he turns them into a set of chocolate bars themselves. And eventually, as far as we know, he begins moving through the lookout, turning the rest of them into chocolate. And so it's pretty devastating for our Goku and onlookers from the planet of the Kais, who are watching this all happen through a neat little crystal ball that the other Kai had given over to them. And I thought this was interesting. I'd like to get your take on this. Gohan is stuck in his ritual with the Elder Kai, and he asks what the status of the battle is. And after witnessing everybody turn into chocolate and basically be killed, Goku tells Gohan to don't worry about it, just focus on the training. Do you think there's any moral implication to Goku just kind of just lying to his son about the situation to make sure he focused on his powering up?
It's a good question. I was kind of thinking about it when it happened too, and I was like, I think it's the best decision. I feel like if anybody told Gohan what was happening, he would stop the ceremony that the Elder Kai was performing and go and try to stop Buu right then and there. So I get why Goku did it. What did you think about it?
I think I agree with you, especially because I think Videl was a part of those casualties. So
yes,
that would definitely be a tipping point for him.
His mother was there, even though she had already been killed. He doesn't know that. So
yeah. So I think between his mother and Videl, I think that'd be too much for him, especially because I think Goku and Supreme Kai assume that Goten and Trunks are dead at this point because they can't sense them either.
Yeah, they can't sense them and they don't see them. So they just kind of assume they were killed or eaten or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, it's just, I have to ask because Goku kind of lies about these things a little bit more easily than I'd be comfortable with. So sometimes I have to stop and think, should he have lied? Like, I get he's trying to go for a certain result, but there's a certain moral currency you're spending whenever you do lie.
I agree. I'm trying to remember exactly how he worded it because I think he said basically like don't worry about it, which is maybe more of a deflection. But maybe I'm misremembering. Maybe he was a little bit more explicit about lying to Gohan.
We do go back over to Hercule, who has arrived at this battered, crumbling city. And him and the puppers grab a snack from an empty store and then walk these empty streets along the boulevard of broken dreams.
It's kind of wild to see what the planet looks like, basically being a barren wasteland. This is like post-apocalypse Earth at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad they show these scenes because it's, they're in this big giant city with these tall buildings and skyscrapers, and there's like a roller coaster park in the background, and then it's just dead quiet. They don't play music. It's just the sound of kind of the gusting wind. It's very a la original reveal of Cell, where it's just quiet streets.
I was about to say the same thing. It's kind of like the imperfect Cell, except there's not clothes lying around everywhere. In fact, it's kind of weird. I can only assume that the attack that Buu sent out with his energy attacks full on vaporized the people that it hit, because you don't see bodies lying in the streets. There's just no one to be seen.
Yeah, in the like the brief still or two that they showed us of the attacks hitting people, it almost looked like it punched through them, but you're right. We aren't shown any bodies, so they had to have been vaporized. And so it's just a ghost town, right? It's like the rapture happened or something.
Yeah, it's scary. But we kind of flip back from that scene to the hyperbolic time chamber, where Gotenks is like, well, I wanted a better moment to reveal this, but I guess I need to use it now, and transforms into Super Saiyan 3. Just as a quick note, I think it's a lackluster transformation.
It's fine. I mean, he grits his teeth. I mean, he swirls with energy and roars, and I don't know. It's whatever. It's also a Super Saiyan 3, a Super Saiyan level that is kind of earned off screen, and I don't know. I'm always kind of wishy-washy about that. I think they should really make earning that next Super Saiyan level feel special. Which Goku learned it off screen too, so it didn't really like feel that special, but I don't know. Yeah, it's fine. He hits Super Saiyan 3, and then he also yells really loud and punches his way out of the hyperbolic time chamber dimension. I don't know. There's just a lot of stuff happening where
Yeah, I mean, this feels just as stupid as Buu doing it. Honestly, this probably feels more stupid than Buu doing it, because Boo's at least like a weird magic creature. You could maybe explain it away, but the fact that Gotenks just powers up and breaks a hole through time space is even more ridiculous.
It's gotta be strong enough. That's the answer to every problem in Dragon Ball, is just be strong enough.
I fucking love Dragon Ball, and that is one of my least favorite parts about Dragon Ball.
Well, this transitions us into episode 147, On a Roll, Boo Boo Volleyball. And Gotenks finds out that his family and everybody on the lookout were eaten, and this pisses him off, and he begins powering up. And he blasts off and begins his assault on Buu, who is mildly impressed by Gotenks' power level for the first time. And it seems like Buu is actually having a little bit of fun now.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it feels like Super Saiyan 3 Gotenks is basically on par with this form of Buu, this Super Buu. We see a few more special techniques. I like a hammer energy attack that Gotenks slices Super Buu in half with.
It's the brain crush hammer. I wrote it down. I got you.
Thank you. I was like, I know it's hammer or something, but there's so many techniques I lost track of them. The interesting one though to me is actually the one after that. I had to rewind it multiple times to listen to it. I'm 98% certain he says final flash.
Yep, that's what I got written down here. He says final flash and then fires two of them, one at each half of Buu that he split.
Like, I kind of like the idea that Gotenks would know the final flash because of Trunks being taught it by Vegeta, but this doesn't look like a final flash. Like, he doesn't even hold his hands in the right way. His fingers are up. They're not like turned sideways like the final flash is, and it's two separate beams to each part of Buu. Maybe it's being nitpicky, but I don't like that part.
maybe the dub got it wrong.
Maybe
they're just throwing a bunch of different technique names or whatever, and Final Flash is one of them. I'm hoping that's what happened. Because I'm not going to read into that. I don't think we ever see a Final Flash fired like that ever again. So I'm willing to just be like, all right, that was a hiccup. Let's ignore that ever happened and kind of move on here.
Yeah, that's fair. That's kind of, yeah, sometimes you got to turn your brain off. But that I mean, it effectively looks like he vaporizes Boo. However, Boo again regenerates and goes on the offensive. We do get a kind of cool attack. Well, it's basically a variant on the Super Kamikaze attack as Gotenks shoots out like a ball of energy that turns into a bunch of ghosts that then assault Boo.
Yeah, and it's kind of neat. It's the Ghost Kamikazes attack Boo like before, and they once again cripple him very similarly to before. Actually, you need to check. It might even be literally the same hurt Boo animation now that I think about it. So
it might be recycled.
Yeah, so we get to see Boo hurt again, and this enrages Boo a little bit. And finally, he's going on the attack because Gotenks is having fun and he's taunting Boo. And we see that arrogance really starting to build up. But this arrogance is not great because it eventually gets Gotenks caught. And we see him get blasted in the face. And he's fired straight back up to the lookout that he was blasted down from. So, yeah, we see him blasted through the lookout, which is in pretty rough shape at this point, as giant chunks of it are flying off.
It's kind of goofy that they're like blasting between the lookout and the surface of the earth. At the same time, there is kind of like a part of me that appreciates it from the video game perspective, where in a lot of video games...
I didn't even think about that. Okay, never mind. It's great. I'm into it now. It's just the video game.
But Piccolo's kind of losing his mind because the lookout's getting destroyed. That's probably the kami in him. And Boo decides to pull out one of his own interesting techniques as he folds himself into an origami ball of bubblegum goodness and then starts just throwing himself bodily at Gotenks.
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't know. It's a very childish battle between these two. It's just all this weird stuff happening. And I know there's a lot of fun things happening. If we get rid of the backdrop of Earth's population being extinct, I probably get into this a little bit more and start having more fun. But Gotenks literally emerged from the hyperbolic time chamber to find out that all of his friends and family were killed. And now we're still doing goofy fight things. It really bothers me.
I think that is probably the part. Like, honestly, I haven't been overly bothered yet by the shifts in tone and the gags, because this is it's very Akira Toriyama. Like, the original Dragon Ball was a gag manga more than it was a fighting manga, honestly. And so this kind of harkens back to that. To your point, the thing that I don't like is Gotenks not really having much of an emotional response to his friends and family being killed, all of the other Earthlings being killed. It's basically like, oh, now I'm really mad. And then he goes on the offensive and continues to do the gag stuff. That feels really ridiculous to me. So I think I agree with you on that point.
You're expecting at some point, you're going to see character growth. You expect that the arrogance is going to be pulled back a little bit, and we're going to see less childish moves and see him kind of grow up a little bit and focus on the fight a little bit more and be a little bit more serious and kind of realize the state of the situation and, you know, the stakes that are at hand. And we kind of never really see that with Gotenks. We get these little flares of emotion, but it never really culminates in anything meaningful. And that's where, like, I don't mind any one of these things happening. I don't mind a couple of any of these things happening. But I feel like we get like gag after gag technique after gag moment. And we have this very, very, very serious situation happening right now. And the gags drag on for too long. At some point, we need to stop and realize, like, hey, you know, humanity's extinct and on the verge of like not existing anymore. All of our friends and family have been killed. Like, it's hard for me to take these jokes here, especially because I actually care about a lot of these characters that were just killed.
No, I very much agree with you on that. However, we're not going to get away from the gags anytime soon because Gotenks traps Boo into what is effectively I mean, he quite literally calls it a volleyball. It looks like a bee honeycomb, and forces Piccolo to set up the volley, saying some embarrassing Yahoo, while Gotenks kind of spikes the ball back down to the earth. Again, another gag attack. I like that Gotenks has a bunch of unique techniques, but the gags are going a little too. It's going too long, like you said.
And this is one of those ones where this feels like a gag at the expense of Piccolo, where they make him look kind of dumb. And I mean, I don't know. I don't like it. I don't like any of this. I don't like anything that's happening right now. This is just one of those moments that's a part of the Buu saga where I'm like, I'm checked out. Not really digging any of this stuff that's happening right now. It just seems very silly, and I don't know what the message or story is supposed to be right now.
Yeah, I actually really like your idea is getting the if Gotenks went through his own mini arc of coming to terms with the fact that his gags are too over the top and his family and friends have been killed, everyone on Earth has been killed, and he needs to start taking this seriously. Even if that came at the very tail end of him being like, all right, now I'm going to take this serious, and then he, spoilers, loses his transformation. That would I would be perfectly fine with that, but he never comes to that point.
Yep, he never stops being arrogant, and he never learns anything. All of this is just we're just doing gags for gags, baby. Yeah. So where are we at with this? Boo emerges from the ball at some point, right? And he's kind of scuffed up and bruised, and Gotenks is gloating. Is that where we're at?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. And Piccolo gives him this warning about the cost of his arrogance, right? And this is where you would think a lesson would be learned. But no lesson is learned. Gotenks is arrogant. The price is partially paid pretty quickly when Boo charges into this laughing child and slams into him. And we see the two erupt into conflict once more. Gotenks is getting the upper hand, and everything's looking great until his Super Saiyan 3 runs out.
Yeah, and Goten and Trunks kind of made a comment about this previously, where they were like, "Oh, the fusion will only last for about 5 minutes if we're in Super Saiyan 3 form," and it's clearly been at least 5 minutes here. Gotenks is now in his base form, not even Super Saiyan, and we already saw that form of Gotenks is no match for Boo. And I think that kind of carries us into the next episode.
It does, which is episode 148. Thanks for waiting, everyone. A reborn Gohan heads for Earth. And we get this base form Gotenks standing before Boo. And he is now a scared little boy who's trying to figure out a way to tiptoe off scene, which I actually do think that this is a little bit funny.
I like that this feels appropriate. I like that this is the way that Gotenks kind of approaches this, as he's effectively trying to figure out a way out of this situation, because he knows he's boned, and he's very well aware. He's like, okay, I got to figure out a way to get out of here. Maybe we can let an hour pass, and then we can fuse and try it again. But otherwise, he's shit out of luck.
But there is some good news in this moment, as Gohan's ritual with the Elder Kai is finally complete. And the Elder Kai advises him that you can kind of tap into it very similar to your Super Saiyan transformations. It's in you. And Gohan powers up, and we get to see this magnificent display of power where there's wind blowing from his body in all directions, and the grass and trees are blown back, and the Elder Kai is almost blown off into the sunset, and there's little bolts of electricity emanating from his body as he powers up. So it's a fun little scene. I also like that it's not just a Super Saiyan form. So I actually kind of enjoy this.
I agree with you. My problem with it, though, so for anybody in the fan base who knows this is considered Gohan's mystic or ultimate form. I've always called it ultimate, but now with beast form, that seems a little bit silly. This, to me, the reason I don't like it, like I agree with you. I like that it's not just another Super Saiyan. I don't like that it's just Gohan. Like there's no transformation. There's no. It doesn't look any different unless you want to count him having like the one bang and his hair spiked up. Like there's no pomp or flash to it, which maybe that's the point of it. I don't know. I've never really liked that about it though.
Yeah, I do agree that there could be a little bit more flair. I think you're 100% right. I'd like to see if someone gets a big power up, you kind of want it to feel a little bit more special than this, right? We get that reveal of power. I almost wish that they would have added, the wind blowing with the electricity in it. I almost would have loved that to just have been a part of that form when he's in that what do you call it, mystic form?
Yeah, Mystic I think makes the most sense.
So when he's in that mystic form, it would be so cool if that breeze was always kind of blowing with the electricity in it as he's kind of like more in touch with his Kai side, his natural state of the universe power. I don't know. I'm still going off on that theory that Gohan should have gone kind of this like defender of the universe kind of route for his power up because it would have been awesome. But yeah, I don't know. I think I'm wish listing. I'm wish listing pretty hard. And this is a preview of what that wish list could be. So I'm excited for very selfish, personal, headcanon reasons.
Yeah, that's fair. But I mean, this is I like Gohan a lot, and so I'm glad to see Gohan actually have a moment and kind of be the star of the show. And we're kind of going to get to see that as Kibito teleports Gohan to Earth. Gohan kind of giving a brief farewell to his father because he's not going to see Goku again. Well,
I like that hug. That was a good hug.
it was. It's a brief moment, but it's like a good fond farewell. And Goku's like, "Go give him hell, son."
And I do like that at around this point, just before Gohan leaves, the Elder Kai actually kind of sourly comments that all of these fighters are putting too much stock in their transformations and that their super forms are overrated. And I wish this would have alluded to more in the future because this comment feels like it's like an omen or foreshadowing. And I wish they would have cashed in more on it, but it's such a good time to make that comment too.
I even really like his comment. You talked about it briefly where he says, "Oh yeah, you just tap into the power, kind of like the Super Saiyan thing that you do." But he basically says like, you know how you do that thing where you're like screaming and yelling and flexing, like, yeah, do that.
Like he's just like not impressed with it. I've been around for countless ages and I'm not impressed by you. Like he's seen it all and he's also just a crotchety, grouchy old man.
Yeah, I do kind of love that. There's one last little note with Gohan here for the moment where when he's brought to Earth by Kibito, he asks Kibito, because he's wearing the outfit that the Kais wear, and so he asks Kibito to give him a gi, a fighting gi, like his father's. And this is the moment that we really get to see what some people probably consider Gohan's like peak form in his mystic form with the orange gi and blue undershirt.
This is not my favorite Gohan form because my favorite Gohan outfit was in the Cell arc when he was wearing kind of the Piccolo outfit. That's my favorite Gohan look. That tops it all for me. I like his look in the Kai outfit too. I think he looks pretty baller in that. The Goku attire that he dons, I'm okay with it because he did spend time with Goku, but I don't know. I feel like Gohan has his own destiny and his own route, and I've always felt that it's different than Goku's. And so it's weird for me seeing him in that outfit.
That's interesting. Like I agree with you as far as which Gohan you think is the best. For me, peak Gohan, at least in terms of look, is 12-year-old Gohan, Piccolo's outfit in Super Saiyan 1 form. I love his hair in that form, looks great. But I do kind of like this. I know you said like Gohan spent a little bit of time with Goku. What I like about this, even though I agree with you that he kind of has his own destiny and whatever the case is, his own path. I like that this feels like what it should be is the passing of the torch from Goku to Gohan, where Gohan's like, okay, I'm going to wear my father's gi. I'm kind of fighting. I'm taking his role. I'm taking the role of defender of the earth. So I'm almost, in a way, I'm fighting in his stead, but he's not going to be around anymore. So I have to take on that mantle. And that's the kind of imagery that I like about him wearing Goku's uniform to this fight specifically.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I do agree that that's the message. For me, that message feels a little bit too on the nose. And I don't know. I like Gohan kind of finding his own path and being his own hero. He's not fighting for the same reasons that Goku fights. He's a defender of humanity. He's not Goku who's looking for that next challenge. And so I would have liked to have seen Gohan be his own character. I don't know. It just feels weird seeing him in the same garb as Goku because I don't view that outfit is, I don't know. I have a whole different set of emotions that go with that outfit as kind of like the person who's always looking for that next big fight, that person who's always going to overcome any challenge and move on to that next step. And I've never really kind of gotten that vibe from Gohan. Gohan is the I'll do whatever it takes to defend my friends. Goku is I'll do whatever it takes to win a battle.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I guess I don't like I associate those traits that you described with Goku, and I think it makes sense that you in turn kind of associate those with Goku's fighting gi. I think I separate those in my mind a little bit, but I definitely get what you mean and why you would connect those two together. I think I like it for the reasons that I described, but I like your idea that it would be nice to see Gohan be his own person in this moment. So yeah. I could kind of see it go either way.
Like we've got Goku training under the Turtle Hermit and wore that on his outfit. Then he trained under King Kai and wore that on his outfit. There's a lot of history and story that goes behind that specific outfit. I'm just like, well, Gohan doesn't really have that history with that outfit. So it just feels like you're putting that outfit on Gohan to make you think of Goku.
You know what? I actually, as you say that, I'm going to lean more into your side of things because I specifically in Dragon Ball, Goku even asks for Master Roshi to give him that uniform multiple times for like the tournaments and stuff. And it does have that symbolism of like, okay, you know, I'm wearing this to honor Master Roshi. And admittedly, that one specifically has Master Roshi's symbol on it, which the one that Gohan wears here does not have any symbol on it. So there's a little bit of difference, but I get what you mean by saying that the outfit has a lot of symbolism for you now. That makes sense.
So yeah, we've got Gohan. He's got his new threads. He's looking good. He's feeling good. And he zooms off to get ready to do battle with the pink bubblegum monster. But while he's zooming off, we see Gotenks realizing that he's really up against the ropes right here. And so he's going to resort to some tricks to try and stay alive. We see him using the Ghost Kamikaze attack to try and create some cover, and then using the explosions to try and like flee and hide. But Buu's not having any of this. He quickly sets his sights on this young boy and stops him in his tracks and gives him a big old whack. And after getting a big old whack, we see two boys arise from a crater rather than just one. And so the fusion has come to an end.
I kind of love the way they pop up too, because they're both still talking in unison, like saying the same thing, as if the fusion has this sort of like weird after effect on them, which is pretty funny.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's kind of that realization they get at the same time where like, oh no, like it's ended. Like they didn't even realize it had ended until after they said something.
Yeah. I mean, this is a terrible situation. Like, if we didn't know that Gohan was coming in here, we'd be like, oh, they're hosed. And I really like Piccolo flying down in front of them, and he's like, I'm honestly not going to be much help here, but there's no way in hell I'm letting you kids fight this alone. Like, let's do the best we can and we'll go out fighting. It's a really good like mentor moment.
Yeah, and Piccolo is just 100% honest. He said that he's not going to let them fight and die alone. And so he makes it pretty clear what's going to happen, but he's not going to let them go through it by themselves. And kind of continuing the gags. The boys have a different plan though, which is to give Buu candy and tell them that they're sorry. And this conversation is so boring that even Boo fell asleep. Like that's how bad all this was.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. Like, I didn't necessarily like their conversation. I'm kind of okay with Boo falling asleep, even though I mean, it's not going to matter much in the long run anyway. But it feels like there's a part of me that could see it as making sense where like Boo doesn't usually exert himself all that much. Like he fought Gotenks and now he's tired. And I could very much see that as like a Toriyama gag, but it's kind of a toss up whether that is a ruiner of the tone here or not.
Now, my thing is this should be the moment where Goku finally arrives on Namek and he shows up and Gohan's neck is broken and things are terrible. And finally there's that ray of light. That should be Gohan arriving to this scene. But instead, we get a silly gag, and then Gohan arrives, and then Boo wakes up. And just, I don't know. I don't like that every serious note is ruined by a dumb gag. It really bothers me.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. The tension for Gohan's arrival is lost, right? Like this should be peak tension. This should not be, oh, Boo's asleep. Well, I guess we're fine. And then Gohan shows up.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not that one of these things happens. It's just every time we need or should get serious, we don't. And then every time there's a gag, and I don't know. At this point, I'm kind of having any trouble enjoying any of the tension because it feels like they blow it every time they build it back up at this point.
I agree. I even want to say, so like a good portion of the gags I wasn't overly bothered by. I mean, we've both kind of emphasized I liked your idea of Gotenks should have kind of gone through an arc of like realizing the tension, but I want to emphasize here that is even lost more while Boo falls asleep and then Goten and Trunks go over like, oh, we're just going to see if he's faking. Let's pull on his antenna and then we'll know if he's faking. Like, what? Like, I get that you're kids. I get that you might not understand all of the ramifications of everything that's going on, but that's too far. That is too far beyond my level of believability that you guys are like, oh, we were about to die and now we're just going to try to wake him up anyway.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, you just start becoming desensitized to some of these gags where you're just like, I don't know what they're doing. I don't believe that this is something that even young boys would do at this point. Like, they know they're in trouble. They know that things are bad. They just watched all their families get killed. And I mean, how many people that they watch die right in front of their eyes? I don't know. Like, I get that, they're kids and they don't have the strongest grasp on reality. And maybe some of this isn't hitting as hard as it should because they don't quite understand. They're not old enough. But at the same time, there should be a level of understanding. Like, there's got to be a limit where these kids kind of are like, all right, yeah, like, I'm going to listen to Piccolo, the adult. Let's go.
Yeah, I agree. Despite our complaints about this, though, this next scene, regardless of the tension or not, I still deeply love as Gohan flies onto the scene. I think even Piccolo at some point is like, is that Goku? And they're like, no, it's Gohan. He's still alive, because at this point they still thought that Gohan was dead. And Gohan flies in, lands on the scene, and we get they basically recycled this line, and I'm so glad that they did, because I love this line. Did you have this line down?
I do. Gohan arrives on scene, is kind of filled in on the situation a little bit about how Boo has pretty much murdered everybody. And Boo's smirking and smiling kind of as everyone's going over the accounts of his victories, he's pretty happy with all of this. Gohan does make a note that he senses the very faint pulse of somebody still alive that should be dead, but he knows the situation is bad right now. And he approaches Buu, who's looking down at, because Super Boo's very tall. And Super Boo's probably a good foot, maybe foot and a half taller than Gohan. And he's looking down, just smiling at Gohan, and he says, "Boy, come on. Are you really planning on fighting me?" And Gohan confidently just stares him in the eye and quips back, "Fight you? No, I'm planning to kill you." It's such a good little exchange.
I love this. I say that they recycled this line because this is almost word for word the line that the original Funimation dub did. I'm not sure. I would imagine this is probably pretty damn close to the exact line in the manga as well. It's just such a good exchange, which is why they probably keep that line almost word for word throughout every iteration of Dragon Ball Z. It is so badass. Like, regardless of, them kind of messing with the tension with the gags, this gets me hyped for this fight between Gohan and Buu.
I also kind of like Goten's response to seeing Gohan face up against Buu again. We see Goten kind of tear up, and he doesn't want to watch another one of his family members get hurt by Buu, because he thought Gohan was dead this whole time. And then like you said earlier, Goku's gone back to Otherworld, and he watched Chi-Chi get basically killed right in front of his eyes. And so we see him convince Trunks to try another fusion, even though their cooldown timer it still hasn't gone up. They still shouldn't be able to fuse right now.
Yeah, I like that a lot too. But where was that emotion 5 minutes ago? Where was that emotion, 30 minutes ago when you were on the lookout? Like, I'm glad that it's there. It's just, it feels like that kind of hit a little bit late.
Yeah, and I don't know that. So that scene where Goten and Trunks first enter the hyperbolic time chamber, and we get this focused kind of down the business Goten after seeing his mother die he starts training hard and he starts eye on the prize, right? That immediately goes away. After that scene, he is no longer focused. He is no longer eye on the prize. When he fuses, it's still the arrogant little butthead that Gotenks has always been. Like, that's why, I don't know. I don't like that scene because I feel like there's no actual payoff to it. It's just he felt that emotion over the death of his mother briefly because he's supposed to. And if there was a long-term payoff, like when he first gets his eyes on Buu, I would have loved to have seen some conviction. I have a bone to pick with you. And I wouldn't even have mind if he had to learn that same lesson that Gohan had to learn against Cell, where he starts playing with his food. That would have been great. I would have loved to have seen that.
Oh, that'd be a great parallel. I agree with you. I think it would have been really cool. So it kind of feels like Gotenks is way more Trunks than it is Goten, right? But I think I would have really liked if they would have transformed into Gotenks, and there's almost like this fighting of which person is kind of in the driver's seat, or maybe as if it's shifting, where like you said, the very first moment that Gotenks shows up and then sees Buu, Goten is kind of in the driver's seat and is like, I'm going to make you pay for what you did to my mother. And then I would even be okay if that was like Goten has his moment of like really sticking it to Buu, and then Trunks kind of takes over and does more of like the showboat and the gags. I would have even been fine with that. But at least having that, like you said, Dayton, that payoff for that emotion.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I would have loved to, in the dueling personality aspect. Oh, that would have been so much fun to watch too, because I mean, Trunks has a very strong personality, and Goten's a little younger, and he's typically just kind of following Trunks and following after him. So it makes sense that Gotenks is usually more Trunks than Goten. But Goten had such a strong reason to really shine through, and enact his own actions. And you're right. I agree with you. It would have been awesome to see that at the beginning, but we'll. All right, let's finish out this last episode and get to more of our overarching opinions, because there's a lot that we've been talking about. We can kind of summarize that in a minute here. So
I agree.
Let's get through episode 149. Buu overwhelmed, Ultimate Gohan's superpower. And Buu kicks this episode off by continuing to gloat as Gohan steps towards him. And this gloating kind of starts coming to an end when Buu starts stepping back, kind of, I don't know, almost like he instinctually knows that Gohan is a threat to him. And at some point, Buu holds his ground and begins screaming in anger. But I love this little kickoff to this fight when Gohan kind of steps his foot in and slides his foot across, kicking Buu off balance just a little bit, and then moving in with a back fist that sends Buu flying. It's such a subtle little move, but there's so much impact and payoff to it. It really feels like the techniques of somebody who's really in control.
They're very, very small, subtle movements. Absolutely. Especially that minor exchange feels like a more of a nod to real life martial arts and like a martial arts master or something that they would do. And he gets in.
We get that immediate comparison to what we were just watching with Gotenks. I think that was their way of showing us that these are two very different fighters.
That's a good point too. Gohan gets in maybe one other blow before Buu takes a swing on Gohan, and Gohan just grabs his fist and then delivers more blows of his own. And these are not the blows like when Gotenks was hitting Buu. Buu is reacting, seeming very hurt from every single blow that Gohan lands on him. So this is whatever the Elder Kai did, it worked.
Yeah, and I mean, Goten and Trunks immediately stop their fusion attempt, seeing Gohan completely in the driver's seat at this point. Buu's even pushed to go on the offensive, and we see him kind of explode these rock shards all around him, sending them flying at Gohan. And in the midst of all this debris, I love this. Buu comes flying in and kind of catches Gohan almost off guard as he opens his giant maw and begins charging a giant ki blast that's going to hit Gohan point blank. But Gohan simply raises his hands and just holds the technique in Buu's mouth, causing it to backfire straight through Buu's body. We see the energy just kind of fly out of all the little porous holes in Buu as his body sort of deflates afterwards. I actually really love the way that this is animated.
I agree. It's a really cool scene. I think it's one of the only times that we see somebody's like mouth ki blast like shoved back into their mouth. Actually, funny enough, the only other time that I can think of something similar to that is when on Namek, when they're fighting Recoome and Gohan saves Vegeta from Recoom's mouth blast, and Krillin basically slams Recoom's mouth shut, and it kind of like blows his teeth out. And
I was about to say that, yeah, because I love that scene so much. And Recoome just like smiles afterwards. Like it doesn't look like it hurts him, but he is missing a few teeth, quite a few teeth.
Yeah, this feels a little bit like that, but a slight variation on it. So it's something we don't see often, and it feels very fun.
Yeah, so this is a gag that's very good and very in character. It doesn't break the moment, right? And I mean, I love this because we see Buu kind of struggling for a moment, and then we get this real quick twist when Buu suddenly stands to his feet confidently. And it almost seems like he's kind of pulled himself back together all of a sudden. And he reveals that he actually sensed Gohan training the entire time and has been waiting for him. And Buu tells Gohan that he must be the most powerful being in existence and that he's going to do whatever it takes to make sure that happens. And I love the scene because Buu starts powering up and we see that kind of purple pink energy coursing along his body, and his eyelids eventually flip wide open and he lets loose this just really wild smile as he stares at Gohan. As I don't know if it's uncontrolled excitement or determination, but we see energy just exploding from his body as he just makes this crazy face staring at Gohan.
Yeah. This I like the scene and I like the parts that you described. I really like the way the Boo's animated here very wildly as he kind of like just detonates. I want to draw attention to one of the things that you said where Boo says I can't let somebody be a more powerful being than me in this universe. I hate that. The reason I hate that is because so many people say that Boo is just a shittier version of Cell, and that is like a perfect parallel there where it's like
Oh no. Oh no.
that is exactly what Cell cared about. Cell cared about being his perfect form and being the perfect being, being the most powerful being. And Boo saying that line, like Boo is not really emphasized anything like that beyond the fact that he likes to fight people who are strong because it's fun for him. But saying that line there makes him feel so much like Cell and just like a lesser version of Cell. And I don't like that, which is a bit of a bummer.
I think I agree with you. I enjoyed the delivery. I enjoyed the look on his face. But in the context of what it means to his character, I don't like it. That's where I 100% agree with you. If you leave that line out, if that line is not spoken, his character is now this just wild, like child that's almost like a spoiled evil brat, right? And with this line now introduced, now this character has a direct motivation. We now are given something that Boo actually cares about and strives for. Whereas before he was, I don't know, like just a very evil child. I don't know how else to describe him, but that's very different than a character like, say, Cell, or in the future when we come across like Jiren, these characters who hold power above everything else. And I don't think that's necessary for Boo's character. And I think I agree with you where I think it actually detracts from his character. I almost liked him just being this, I don't know, evil child. It's different. It's at least a personality to his character that is unique to him.
Yeah. I mean, like you kind of described it, it does give him like a goal or a motivation. I honestly like Boo. I would be perfectly okay with Boo having a goal or a motivation, but if you give him the same one as Cell, I'm out. Like, I'd much rather him just be an angry, evil, powerful child than just be a watered down version of Cell who believes that they have to be the most powerful creature in the universe. Like, that it's the single line. Like if they could have removed that line and I would have been much happier.
And let's continue the similarities just a little bit. Cell and Boo were both created by evil masters, right? They're both not natural, they're both created. I think Cell's motivation instilled into him from his master makes a lot of sense. He was kind of taken, like he's a bunch of parts from all the warriors that were strapped together to be the perfect fighting machine. And so it makes sense that he cares about perfection because he was designed from the ground up to be the perfect warrior. He has a singular focus, and his creation, like he was created for that focus, right? Where something like Boo, I don't think Boo was necessarily created with that being a part of his being. I'm sure Bibbidi. I'm sure Bibbidi maybe had that kind of intent where I'm going to create like the strongest, monster and use it to take over the universe. But I very much doubt he would have created that monster with that monster having, well, maybe he would have. I don't know. I don't know anything about Bibbidi. Now that I think about it, maybe that motivation was there. I don't know. I really have no idea what intentions and what will Bibbidi put into his finest creation.
We really don't get enough background on Bibbidi and on Boo's origins to really say one way or the other. I would say that the only thing that we really kind of have an illusion to is that Bibbidi wanted to use Boo's power to terrorize people and kind of rule over them. And that's about the extent of it that we really understand from the narrative, as far as I know.
Okay. Let me we've only got a couple bullet points left here, so let me just summarize it and then we can continue through the weeds if we'd like.
Yeah.
We find out that Mr. Satan tried to stop for a beer because he was thirsty, but Boo's giant explosion broke the bar he was in and also spilled his beer, so he didn't get a beer. This is the saddest moment in all of Dragon Ball. I want to be clear. He had a cold one in his hand and he wasn't able to drink it. So pour one out, boys. We find out that Gohan had saved Piccolo and the boys from the big mushroom cloud explosion that Buu caused. Buu also disappeared throughout all of this. And Gohan's sure that Buu didn't die. He didn't sacrifice himself, but he actually disappeared and he's planning something. But there's still some hope for our Z fighters, though, because Gohan was able to sense the very faint energy of Dende earlier. And so they make plans to go out and find Dende to see if maybe the hopes of the Dragon Balls are still on the table. And while they fly out there, they run into Mr. Satan, who's been wandering the desert or something looking for beer. So they scoop him up. They fly out to Dende. They find out that Mr. Popo had just hurled Dende from the lookout to save him from Buu, which is hilarious, by the way. I love he was just like, I have to save you. Yee!
I do kind of like that part. There is we've kind of glossed over the writing part for Piccolo's character that I absolutely hate.
Oh no.
Because, and it's I'll say this, it's minor, but Gohan basically senses Dende, and Piccolo says, like, Piccolo is basically expressing like, oh, Buu already killed everybody on the lookout, including Dende. He must have had plenty of time to do so. And I think it's Gohan who points out, like, weren't you in the hyperbolic time chamber? So when you're in the hyperbolic time chamber, for people who are outside of the chamber, not much time passes. They basically express like, oh, it took them like Piccolo and Gotenks about an hour to poke their own hole from the hyperbolic time chamber to the outside. And Piccolo's thinking like, oh, if we were in there for an hour, Buu would have had tons of time to track down everybody.
Like he just forgot how the hyperbolic time chamber worked.
Yeah, he basically flipped it around. He flipped the time backwards. And Gohan's like, wait, that's not how that works. He's like, no, it's the other way around. Like when you're in the hyperbolic time chamber, not a lot of time passes in the real world. And Piccolo literally says, oh yeah, I got it backwards. During the fight, I must have just not been thinking clearly. And I'm like, you are supposed to be the smartest of all of the Z fighters, man. Like this is such a silly mistake for you to make. It makes no sense to me.
Yeah, it's weird because I don't know, they make him get that wrong. It's also like, does it have really any bearing on any of the story that he got that wrong, or does it just make him look silly?
It just makes him look silly, honestly. Like it's this sort of like false disaster sort of mindset, because he believes that Dende is dead and they don't have the Dragon Balls, so they're I don't know.
But there's no reason for him to think that way. Like, you know, like false desire. It makes sense with, say, Gohan, who, how the hell would anybody know that he was swept away off to the world of the Kais by the Supreme Kai, right? So when everyone's mourning his loss, even though he's still alive, there's no reason anyone would have known that he was still alive. Whereas
right.
Piccolo absolutely should have damn well known how the hyperbolic time chamber worked.
Yeah, 100%. And even in addition to that, even if Dende has a low power level, Piccolo's no slouch at sensing power levels. Like, if he stopped for a moment to sense Dende, he absolutely could have done so. In fact, he does do so when Gohan points it out. So
Piccolo has proven to be one of the better Z fighters at sensing power levels. He's often able to just like watch battles from afar. His ability to sense is so strong. So he should have been one of the people who picked up on that pretty quickly.
100%. I agree. It's kind of a minor nitpick, but anytime you have a character where you're like, this is the smart character, and then you write them as being dumb, I hate that.
It's like they do one thing and you made them not do the one thing. Come on. Like, I'm not asking for a lot here. And we're already in an era where characters are struggling to have relevance. Why take it away? Or why go back on it at this point? And why like this?
Yeah, 100%. I kind of drug us backwards a little bit, but this is like the tail end of the episode here as our Z fighters scoop up Mr. Satan. So he kind of gets saved by them in a way. They scoop up Dende, and then the tail end of the episode is basically Majin Buu or Super Buu coming back. I guess I'm kind of skipping over. Mr. Satan does learn that his daughter Videl is dead, and they're gonna bring her back with the Dragon Balls. But then Buu is flying back on the scene, not trying to hide himself. So he, it's kind of this weird situation as the episode ends with Buu coming back after less than an hour. So they're kind of like, what would have changed? Why is he coming to fight us head on now?
Yeah, and that's the cliffhanger we're left with at least at the end of this episode of Instant Transmission. So now we can get lost in the weeds all we want. We finished everything up. First and foremost, when Mr. Satan is shaking Goten's head back and forth, and Goten's just smiling as his head's being shook, I want a gif of that because that is, I don't know why, it just cracks me up because Goten's just smiling as his head's being shaken around.
He's kind of like, I was trying to listen to what he says because Goten's also like murmuring something as Mr. Satan's like yelling about like, you swear you're going to bring back my daughter. And I like that moment. It's a funny gag moment. It's really, it's pretty entertaining.
And Goten's just, smiling and nonchalantly talking about how, oh yeah, we can bring her back. Like we can bring her back to life. That just cracked me up. But anyway, so I've kind of discussed a lot of my feelings about this chunk of episodes as we've gone along. This is where the Buu story kind of jumps the shark for me. This is where everything before this chunk of episodes I actually enjoyed a lot. I liked how they set up Goten and Trunks as the next generation of heroes. I like the mysticism with the Kais and stuff like that. There's an interesting cast of characters that we've kind of got to experience and work with. Deborah's awesome. Elder Kai is just, it's kind of interesting, the guy in The Rock. It's probably overdone a little bit or we spend too much time on it, but it's still interesting. And we get to travel to, the world of the Kai, so it's a new planet, it's a new place. There's some neat things happening. Vegeta's fight with Goku was incredible. And there's some great dialogue. However, once we get to this chunk of episodes, it really starts to slow down. We don't have a lot of the interesting characters we had before. We spend way too much time on gags during a time where we have some of the darkest stuff happening in Dragon Ball. And so I don't know what to feel half the time. And it sort of turns into just emotional mush for me, where like when something dark happens, I know there's a gag around the corner, so don't get too invested. When there's an emotional moment, it's only going to last for about a second and not really mean anything down the line. And I mean, I don't know where the payoff or character growth is in any of the chunk of episodes we just watched, because it all just kind of feels bleh.
I think that I largely agree with you. I think for this chunk of episodes, I think the difference between your perspective and mine on it is that this is a much steeper drop off for you than it is for me. For me, this is like a low, like a gradual roll off, because I think I feel the same way about the things that you don't like about this. Like I don't like the tone shifts. I'm a little bit more forgiving of the gags. Maybe I think that they are oftentimes ill placed. uh in terms of whether it be pacing or whether it be like Boo falling asleep before Gohan arrives is terrible, ruins the tension 100%. So stuff like that. What I will say as a positive, because we've kind of given a lot of our negatives about this set, I still feel up to this point, and this is one of the things that we brought up in our last instant transmission episode, I still feel like Akira Toriyama is doing a fantastic job of sticking to his formula of passing the baton onto the next generation. I really like that we had these two paths of solving the problem that is Majin Buu between Goten and Trunks and Gohan. And we've kind of run through the sequence of the Goten and Trunks path, and it failed. They lost their fusion. They weren't able to finish Buu off in the last moment. And now we're getting the Gohan path, where Gohan comes in and pulls their butts out of the fire. And so up to this point, I'm still, even with the issues that I have, I'm still on board where I'm like, okay, this is great. This is a really good transition of moving from the Goten and Trunks solution path to the Gohan path, and we kind of get to see both of those paths play out. That moving forward is not going to be exactly what I want it to be, but up to this point, I'm still on board.
I think I actually agree with a lot of your points. And honestly, I think I would be 100% on board with you, or at least mostly on board with you, if all they needed to do was show some actual character growth from Goten and Trunks. And I think I'm on board with you, where they go through their journey fighting Buu, learning their techniques and working together. And at the end of it, they're somehow better. Like they grow as from boys to fighters or something like that. There's some sort of emotional growth from them. But I feel like they are no better after their fight with Buu than they were at the start of it. I don't see any difference in their actions, and I don't see really any learning moments that stick with them. And so it's hard for me to look at that as anything other than a waste of time.
I can't argue with you there. I admittedly I agree with you that there should have been some sort of character arc for Goten and Trunks. And there is, to a very small degree. I think the only, like, they've kind of gone through these traumas, right? And we kind of get to see those like flashes in the pan of those emotions that they express. Especially like Goku, when he's telling them like, boys, this is on your shoulders now. And they kind of like, especially after they see him and how powerful he is, they full on heels together. They're like soldiers in his little army at that point. And then like Goten being upset about his mother. But yeah, there's not the overarching payoff, and it feels like it needs that. The fact that it would just be better with them getting some sort of narrative.
That's all I'm asking
arc.
for, because we built up to this for a long time. I mean,
Yeah.
over a dozen episodes of the fusion and how the boys are the future. There's all this buildup, right? And I don't see any growth. I don't mind them not winning the day. That's fine. I mean, actually, I think it's best if they don't actually win the day, but they get the kind of that taste of being a hero, that taste of being an actual champion and warrior, and they get a learning experience from it, because that, I think, would have been the biggest thing for them. Like, what is it like to actually have real responsibility set on your shoulders? Because I don't think they've had any of that their entire lives. They've kind of lived in not only peaceful times, but in the shadow of their parents. Like Vegeta and Goku were stronger than anything that would even come near the planet. So they never really had responsibility. And I would have loved to have seen that character growth from them. And this is something that the Cell arc did really well, where Gohan let his power go to his head, and it resulted in the death of his father. And so he has that immediate growing moment. and it kind of changes him, and he grows up, and he goes out and he starts becoming the fighter he needs to be to win the big battle. I love that in Cell. I wish we would have had a piece of that here.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the audience could kind of infer some character growth, or at least some elements of what you kind of expressed as like a character arc, because the boys do get to fight the big bad guy. They do get to kind of be in the driver's seat as the hero for this brief period of time, and then they get to experience that failure. But we're not fed that as the audience from like the narrative perspective, and getting to see how the boys think and feel and act in accordance with that experience. It doesn't feel like that has necessarily changed them, but we could maybe infer that that is kind of like something that is going on underneath the surface. It feels like it should be more overt than it is, though.
A little bit more payoff, overt payoff. And I think another thing that kind of bothers me about this chunk of episodes is we had a lot of fighting in all of these episodes. I have like 2 little small notes about choreography that I like. There was a lot of just kind of goofy, uninteresting fighting happening in a lot of these episodes. There are some fun techniques that are thrown out there. Like we've said, we like Go Tanks because he's trying to do some new things, but he's doing new things to a fault where it hits a point where you just kind of like, oh, well, this is just a attack he throws from above them, and he calls it this thing, or he's going to kick them and then they explode and it's called this thing. And it's like, all right, well, okay. An episode of that stuff, super fun. They're kids. And like I said earlier, they trained themselves. So it makes sense that they came up with these big bombastic moves. And I love an episode that kind of reflects, hey, this is what kids training themselves comes up with. That's super fun. But man, there was like 4 episodes of super bombastic, over the top, random techniques, and just, it's hard for me to be that involved with gags when we've got planetary extinction on the table.
Yeah, I mostly agree with you there, but one of my favorite elements of Gotenks is how many unique techniques he brings to the table versus, honestly, many of our other Dragon Ball characters. Like the Galactic Donut is really cool. The Ghost Kamikaze, honestly, that I can think of, there's nothing really quite like the Ghost Kamikaze at all.
I think that attack's incredible. I love that attack. I love it as a signature move.
It's super cool. I really like that one a lot. He's got a couple of other ones. The one that he turned Buu into a volleyball is, while the implementation, like the gag implementation and the timing is not good, I like the technique in itself. It is very interesting as a technique.
I mean, it's kind of a less deadly version of what Frieza did.
It is. But again, that's like, even though it's somewhat similar to that one, it's still like, those are things that we haven't seen frequently, right? Like the moment that you described with Gohan shoving Buu's mouth ki blast back into his face, we were able to think of one other moment that is kind of similar, and that's kind of akin to like Gotenks' volleyball attack with Frieza's attack. I like stuff like that, even if there are elements that are like similar. We've only seen that twice in all of Dragon Ball, which runs, almost 1,000 episodes. So even if there's one other element that's kind of like it, I'm okay with that.
I mean, I'm just saying, I still love Deborah and all the weird crap he was doing. I love the fact that he was breathing fire and his spit would turn people into stone, and then he could summon weapons out of the ether. That's still probably one of my favorite characters that did not get nearly enough screen time.
I'll give you that. Admittedly, Deborah might even bring more to the table than Gotenks. It would be a close comparison, but I mean, again, I know there's lots of problems with the Buu arc, but we've got 2 characters here, actually 3 characters, between Deborah, Majin Buu, and Gotenks, who bring so many unique techniques to the table, which is not something we see very often in Dragon Ball, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I don't know. I agree with you. I think the difference is I think the execution could have been a lot better. I like a lot of the elements. They've got a lot of the ingredients that I'm looking for. But like we had a lot of episodes of fighting and there's almost no choreography for me to speak of. There's no exchanges where I'm like, "Oh, I really really like the way this moved into this and the way they used that." All of Gotenks's attacks were kind of gags. So like while there were cool techniques, really only the Ghost Kamikaze really felt like it had some payoff to it. And maybe that's part of the reason why I love that attack so much. I don't know. I liked Gohan's little kind of foot sweep, like mini foot sweep that knocked Buu off balance and resulted in the side fist. There's actually a decent point too on the lookout where Gohan goes to launch a couple of punches at Buu, and Buu stretches his body real long like and moves his body like his shoulders and like hips stay in the same spot, but he's just moving his center torso kind of stretched very thin left and right, moving it around Gotenks's attacks. I do like that creative freedom once again with the physical properties of Majin Buu. That was fun, but I don't know. I'm not a big fan of this chunk of episodes. I really feel like there's a lot of potential, but none of it ever really pays off for me.
Yeah, I can't really argue with you there. I think I probably like this chunk a little bit more than you do, but it's still, I mean, we've talked about this chunk for a while. I think because we both have strong feelings about it one way or the other, I think a lot of those feelings can be negative because there's a lot of stuff in here that's like, this could be great if it had just a little bit of tweaking. Like there's, I think you said it, there are great elements in here. If they just adjusted a few little pieces, it would be so much better.
I 100% agree with that. It's honestly, there's not a lot that they would need to change for me to walk away from this and be like, I absolutely love this. Like there's a lot of good ideas in here. And like you were talking about earlier, the fact that we get to see so many fun and interesting techniques from Gotenks, and Dragon Ball is very stagnant with, how many different colors of beam can you call a brand new technique, right? Like,
yes.
It's really cool seeing something fun. And some of the gags in here are actually in line with characters and actually did give me a good laugh. And I mean, there's a lot of fun things that did happen. It could have been great. And I don't know. I see what Toriyama was trying to do, and I still respect it. I still think it's actually pretty decent story writing. I just wanted a little bit better execution. So, and if you like this, I absolutely understand why. I'm not saying that this is poor content. I'm just saying I wanted a little bit more. I wanted better execution. I'm let down because of A, B, and C, because it should have been great, but instead I feel like I'm wanting more.
I think that's the real issue, is that I think for both of us and probably a lot of the audience can look at this and say, man, this could have been excellent, but it's not, because these few things are just missing the mark. And I think that that's what makes it really frustrating, honestly, is because it really has some great set pieces to it, and it could be really, really cool, and it's not quite there.
I mean, Piccolo was really shining in a few of these moments as kind of that master tactician and being just absolutely ruthless and doing whatever it takes to what he offered all of humanity for a couple hours of time, for a couple hours to get Goten and Trunks up to snuff. And I love that brutal, just do whatever it takes to win decision making. So that's one awesome character moment that they had written into here.
I mean, funny thing is, that's a perfect example though of like my perspective of that is that I agree. I love the way that Piccolo's written throughout all of this until the very last episode where they treat him like an idiot.
Sometimes you got to just take a one-off comment in Dragon Ball and just ignore it. I don't know what it is, but every once in a while they just say something where you're just like, let's pretend that was never said, because it kind of breaks the universe.
Yeah. There were, we touched on a few of those today. Like, I hate that line that Buu says of, I can't let anyone be stronger than me in this universe. It's, I hate it so much.
There's a lot of implication with that. Like, can we not have him say that? Because I don't think I'm a big fan of that. Or just, I mean, the moment where they just yell to get out of another dimension. That's mechanically breaking the universe. So let's kind of ignore that ever happened. Let's just say the hyperbolic time chamber had a special set of circumstances that allowed that to happen, because, ooh, buddy.
I might go on record in saying that alone is maybe one of the worst writing decisions in all of Dragon Ball.
I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of good stuff in here. There's plenty to complain about as well. But I mean, it's still Dragon Ball at the end of the day. And it's not like all this was filler, right? Because that's usually what I'm referring to when I'm talking about, like, this is bad content. I'm talking about the copy Vegeta arc. I'm talking about episodes where you watch it and you're like, God, I wish this just didn't exist in Dragon Ball. Or I regret spending my time in this episode because it was obviously filler. None of these episodes were that. Actually, none of these episodes were filler. They were all trying to tell a story. And I see why Kai left most of the content in here. And sometimes it feels like we're doing a lot of MacGuffins where we have to go here because of blank, and then we go here because of blank, and then we go here because of blank. Which is why you have to leave all this content in here, because they end up in different places for minor reasons.
Yeah. One last detail I want to get into in the weeds of, I think we've kind of expressed most of our opinions on this, but I forgot to ask you, what do you feel about the Elder Kai releasing Gohan's potential? Do you feel like it is kind of an unearned power-up, or are you okay with it?
Ooh. Well, you have to bring up the fact that when Gohan was a Namek, he already had this happen, right? Like, he's already had his potential unleashed once.
Right.
And now we're doing the same thing. We're going to the world of the Kais and we're unleashing his potential again. I don't know how I feel about it. Like, we've already set the precedent that we can unleash someone's potential, so I don't mind the act of that happening. That's something that happens in Dragon Ball. But how many times can you do it to the same character? And, I mean, I don't know. At this point, if I forget that I know anything that happens in the future, and I'm just watching this for the first time and I'm seeing this happening, my gut thought would be there's something really, really special about Gohan. There's something that's far more powerful with him than there is anybody else in the Dragon Ball universe. And that's why it works on him. That's why he specifically is chosen to be kind of powered up or his potential unlocked. That is kind of my initial gut feeling without looking into the future at all. And so I guess I don't mind it if I'm being completely, 2020 hindsight blind, because I feel like it's alluding to maybe something really special that's going to be shown to us down the line. Now, using future knowledge and knowing that there's absolutely no payoff to that, I think it's kind of BS, and I don't know why they did this. Please do something to make him relevant. Whatever that power-up is, give him that.
Yeah, I don't like it. They did it once on Namek, and yeah, okay. Even on Namek, it felt like, okay, this is kind of a cheap power-up that is not really earned. Actually, well, no, I'll take that back. There's a subtle earning of it on Namek in that the reason they got to that point to even be able to have their power unlocked is because they saved the other Namekians. They treated the Namekians with kindness while Frieza was there trying to get help from the Namekians by murdering them. So by virtue of character, they earned that power up. So, okay, give it to you a little bit for the Namekian
There's something there, right? There's some breadcrumbs where you can follow to the power up, and you can justify it at least if you really want to.
Like, you really got to stretch it to justify it. But yes, there is some justification there. This one, I mean,
See, that exasperated is exactly how I feel too, because I'm like, like, I don't think I know I don't like it, right? Like, I know
Right.
I don't like. I know I'm not happy that it happens. I'm just trying to figure out how bothered I am, right? That's where I'm at.
yeah, and I agree. Like, it's, you said it. They already did this. They released his potential once. They're already doubling up on a power up, which feels not good. They, I'm trying to justify, like, how did Gohan earn this? The only reason that he gets this power up is because he's powerful. Like, he's already a Super Saiyan 2, and the Supreme Kai sees him, sees his potential there. Uh, and then the other reason is that he's able to, because he's powerful, he's able to pull the sword from the stone and then breaks the sword kind of unintentionally. Like, the only real reason he's getting this power up is because he's already powerful. I guess you could argue that, again, he's kind of earning it by virtue of character, because he's helping the Kais, he's trying to help save the world, he's trying to stop Buu. But man, if you keep making those arguments, like, it's a very thin veil of a reason for him getting these power ups.
And so with his original power up, his potential being unleashed when he was on Namek, I actually kind of like that, because how Goku journeyed to King Kai to learn from him, and he got his Kaioken was his power up from King Kai at that time. This was kind of a similar story for Gohan, even though the unlocked potential is just a power boost. I wish it would be something more interesting. Kind of like how we discussed earlier with his second power boost. There's Mystic Gohan it's just a power boost. There's really no signifying character elements to it. I wish they would do something with that. That's a valid complaint. But I don't know. I liked it on Namek because it added to the mysticism of the Namekian people. And you always got the vibe from them that they're kind of more in touch with nature and living things, and that I don't know, there's like some nature magic going on with them. And I like that. I like the world having some mysticism to it. And the Grand Elder, Super Kami Guru, unlocking Gohan's potential kind of added to that as well. And that's why I kind of liked it there. Now, move over to the Kais. You kind of want, like, what's that next step? Because, like, King Kai taught some freaking bomb-ass techniques, literally. And then we get over to the Supreme Kai and Grand Kai or Elder Kai or whatever you want to call them. And it's just a power-up. Where's the cool stuff? Where's the earth-shattering kaboom stuff? Like, come on. I want, like... I think that's my biggest thing, is I'm mostly just disappointed at how mundane the Supreme Kais are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or at
I
least
agree.
their techniques, their teachings.
Yeah. And I mean, even that in itself is supposed to be a gag, right? Where the Elder Kai is sitting around reading comic books or watching dirty shows, and
He's like
that's
telling
how
Gohan to
he's-
concentrate even though he's not concentrating. And yeah, even that whole thing's kind of a gag. Yeah. I think that's my big takeaway is I wish Gohan's experience with the Kais would have been more interesting, because at the end of it all, he just gets a guru power up, and that's all it really is. And that's kind of disappointing. You almost hope that he would leave with some sort of new technique, some sort of spice to make his whole journey to the world of the Kais, which, by the way, that should be a big deal, right? He's the first mortal to ever set foot on the world of the gods. And I don't know. He just walks away with a power up. It should have been more. I'm not bothered by the power up. I'm bothered by the missed opportunity to actually make it something interesting.
Yeah, I agree. The only thing that I'll say that is kind of like on the other side of the fence, contrary to what I feel is like my typical stance on it is that I guess that I think there's something to be said, and the other guy kind of vocalizes it even. There's something to be said for less is more. And that's kind of, honestly, that's kind of what Akira Toriyama does a lot of the time. Like Frieza's final form looks the most plain and basic out of all of his forms, and that's the most powerful, right? And so it's kind of the same principle here with Gohan's power up with his mystic form. And you could even, if you really wanted to dive into like the philosophy of it, of being like, well, you know, he just needs to rely on his own inner power and not rely so much on transforming, or maybe this is even like an element of like, this is more his human side than relying on his Saiyan nature.
Yeah, I've actually heard people talk about that sort of thing where Mystic Gohan is moving away from, you know, his Saiyan side and going his human route. I've heard that before.
Yeah, so I think that there could be an argument for those things. I still don't like the way that it's handled, though. I don't think that there's enough emphasis put on those if that's the route that they were trying to go with it. And if it's not the route they were trying to go with it, I think that there should be more. I think that it should be more flashy or just different.
I mean, my approach with Dragon Ball is that if it's cool, I will always hand wave it. Like, I will always be like, cool, yep, that was awesome, so I don't care about the story elements because I'm having a good time. So just do something awesome. I don't like shoehorn in whatever story you need to, but man, just give me something exciting. Give me some flavor, or give me some cool backstory, or give me something, anything. Because all we have right now is a goofy 25-hour ritual, some boob jokes, and then a raw dog power-up.
I think that's the perfect way to put it, and probably a nice cherry on top of that conversation. but yeah, I think this set of episodes is just a mixed bag. There's a lot lacking in this chunk of episodes, I think. Did you have anything else you wanted to say about these episodes, Dayton?
Well, my last comment is that I've definitely been negative on this set of episodes, and I want to emphasize because I did not remember enjoying this as much of the Buu stuff as I did now. Like, either Kai did a better job than I'm giving it credit for chopping out some things, or I was just overly harsh on it, or maybe I listened to public opinion on it too much and it warped my view on it over the years. But I will say, up until this chunk of episodes, this chunk is very controversial for me as far as my opinions on them. Everything before this chunk, I actually enjoyed a lot. I think Toriyama did a great job with character development between Goku and Vegeta, and there's some great fights, and there's a lot of build up, and there's that passing of the torch that's happening. I mean, there's so much good up till this point that I really want to rant and rave about. And so maybe it's because I'm coming off that peak that like, no, I want momentum to keep going. I want to keep going up. I don't want to go down. And so maybe that's why I'm overly harsh, but I will say up to this point, I've actually had a lot better of a time than I thought I was going to have.
Good. I'm glad that that's been your experience. And yeah, I mean, you've heard me. I continue to say that I really enjoy a lot about the Buu arc. And so yeah, even I've been probably pretty harsh on this set of episodes too, but it's because I want it to be perfect. Of course it's not gonna be, but there's so many elements that are like, these are so good if you just change just a little bit.
It would take so little to improve things vastly. Like this, they're so close to having the story exactly where it needs to be.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's probably a good point to wrap up, though. So that's going to be it for this episode of Instant Transmission, where we discuss everything Dragon Ball. This has been your host, Todd.
And Dayton.
Don't forget, we're on Patreon and Twitter. If you want to help us summon Shenron so we can make better content, you can find us at patreon.com/ITDB podcast, stands for Instant Transmission Dragon Ball Podcast, and over on Twitter at x.com/ITDB podcast. And please leave a like, review, or subscribe on whatever podcasting platform you're listening to us on. It helps us out a lot. Be sure to join us next time as we assimilate into the humanoid Big League Chew in part 2 of the Evil Buu Arc. Only a handful of people still walk the earth thanks to Buu, but Gohan, with his potential unlocked, seems to be the savior everyone has been waiting for. Will Gohan be able to make good on his declaration of death for Buu? Or will the pink blob turn the half Saiyan into chocolate? Will Gohan become the hero of our story? Find out next time. And to all our fellow Dragon Ball fans, stay safe out there, and remember to keep rocking the dragon. Gohan, let it go. Your aspirations of being relevant, let them go.
Poor guy. Oh no.